Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies, all brought to you by FanDuel. It's time, Sam, for our Wednesday update. All the news and notes around the NFL. We won't jump right into the Wednesday update, but it's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Yeah, we're getting some news happening already. It's, getting towards the start of the new league year, of free agency, of all those kinds of things. And, moves are already getting made.
We called a slight audible on what we're going to do today and tomorrow. So today we're talking cut candidates and piggybacking off of what happened yesterday or this week with the Dolphins making some big moves. Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and James Daniels, some of the moves that they made. There'll be more.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go through various cut candidates and what we're going to be seeing over the next few weeks.
I don't want to shock you, but the Kansas City Chiefs just restructured Patrick Mahomes.
Breaking news.
That freed up $43.1 million or something. So, this crisis of salary cap that the Chiefs were in, for the several years since he signed that contract, this is what happens every year.
Since you mentioned it, that it's funny because the restructures used to be positioned as like a humanitarian effort on part of the player.
Right.
It was like Patrick Mahomes.
Good for that player.
Has restructured his contract on behalf of the Kansas City Chiefs to allow them.
To give them back.
Right.
Some,
to just
some flexibility.
Like $45 million worth of flexibility here. I mean, it's just moving money around. Moving it around.
Well, particularly, the Mahomes thing, he signed this, decade-long contract. The whole structure is set up so that every single year he can do exactly this for the Kansas. Like, it's one of the most team-friendly contracts in all of football because it gives them this ability every year and has been built into the contract structure itself. And yet every year, people look at the number. Oh, look, there's a red number next to Kansas City's salary cap. They're in trouble. It's like, no, you got to factor in.
They still might be, but they might be less flexible.
They have less flexibility than they have in the past. But like the idea that they were ever in real cap trouble when they could literally free up more than the entire amount they're over the cap by just restructuring Mahomes, which is baked into the concept every year, is silly.
So then we're going to get into, we've got cut candidates today. We'll hit up all the news. A big name free agent, professional tease here, big name free agent, wide receiver is going to hit the market.
Wow.
A big name. Surprising. It's going to hit the market. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. And then tomorrow we'll do our free agency preview. And so we've talked about it maybe being weaker as far as free agency goes. Our friend Greg Rosenthal agrees maybe it's weak at the top. Mm-hmm. But he does his rankings every year for NFL.com, top 75 or 100, whatever he puts out. And it's he's talking about, hey, look, there's a lot of starters here. And it is true. We're going to look at a lot of teams having the ability to add 3 or 4 starters in free agency alone, and other teams where you say, hey, look, they're depleted. They feel depleted right now after this first wave of free agency as their players leave. Maybe even the Super Bowl champion Seahawks, who have some key free agents. So we'll break down the free agent class, go position by position, give you some strengths and weaknesses and some players to keep an eye on tomorrow. So the next 2 days are getting us set up for the new league year, which, of course, is the second week of March, and players that are going to be available, names that you're going to be hearing bandied about over these next few weeks. Next week we're in Indy at the Combine. We'll get you all the news and notes coming out of Indianapolis. We'll do our normal Mock Draft Monday, and coming out of that, we'll do our rebuilding, fixing every team in 5-minute series. We'll rebuild every team the week after the Combine. So we'll be grinding the week after the Combine, maybe 5 days straight.
Busy week
of shows coming out of the Combine. So that's your little look ahead.
Nice.
What we got going on here at Check the Mic. All right, let's get to our Wednesday update. There's usually the bugler. Make a noise.
What did the bugler noise make?
Now it's time for the Wednesday update.
That's what we're
brought
starting
to you
with.
by the Cincinnati Bugler.
Wednesday update time. Let's start with. Is that where we're starting?
It is now.
Did we My bad.
Anyway,
I thought we talked about that before.
We had at least mentioned it. Yeah.
Maybe we're not doing the Wednesday update.
We just did it. It came on the screen, right?
We did it. We didn't reshape the entire document here.
No, that's true.
All right. Do I want to start with? Oh, yeah, okay. So we'll start with this. The Dolphins made all those moves. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yes.
This is very professional here. Imagine if this was
Real TV?
show.
Yeah. You'd have a guy in your ear so mad right now.
So mad at me. So mad. But I'm not. Imagine GMAT.
GMAT saw this.
Livid.
The man would never talk to you again.
He would get this off the sizzle reel.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Dolphins news. We will talk about the Dolphins news. However, yesterday, the report coming from Mike Evans, agent, Bucs wide receiver, that he's coming back for year 13. And it might not be with the Tampa Bay Bucs. He's been a Buck for life. He has, he re-signed a couple years ago. They went through this deal. We didn't know if him and Baker Mayfield would be back. They brought them both back. Mike Evans hits free agency once again, and it sounds like Tampa could still get him back, but it sounds like he's going to hit the market in some
Test the market.
Test it. He's
Yeah.
going to test it.
Test the market.
There you go.
Dip your foot in
well
the water.
done. Well done. As you're wearing your Bucks creamsicle today.
This is
Close.
more yellow than creamsicle.
I don't know. It's the lighting in here. It's probably creamsicle to our viewers.
You never tell with the lighting we've got.
I mean, when you add the yellow and yeah, that could happen. So discuss.
Yeah, I mean, look, my assumption is always going to be that Mike Evans ends up going back to Tampa Bay. He feels like one of those, one-team guys. They still need him. I think you see that every time he's not on the field. They miss him significantly. He adds something to that receiving core that they don't have. But it's only smart business to test the market, see what's out there, see what kind of contracts might get offered your way. And if someone's willing to offer him significantly more money than Tampa Bay is, then it's a live option.
The rumblings are that teams like the Bills, every receiver that is available.
He is the perfect, he's the receiver the Bills have been missing since they got rid of Stephon Diggs, right? That's the guy that they haven't had in that receiving room. So if Brandon Beane has finally recognized the self-evident truth that everyone else has been banging on about for years, he makes perfect sense for them.
He does. So every receiver will be tied to the Bills. Teams like the Patriots, especially if they're going to move on from Stephon Diggs. We had heard also rumors. I believe Stephon Diggs still under contract with New England, but may not be. He's a one-year guy, I think, around many NFL teams right now.
Generally.
And so if Stephon Diggs isn't back, then you're talking about New England looking for a number one wide receiver. How do you find that guy? Those guys don't exist. But Evans for, 2 more years. So he's an interesting player who has been obviously incredibly consistent when you get to the 1,000-yard seasons and everything. He has spurts of dominance. I don't think he's ever been a truly dominant, top 5 receiver at any point in his career, but he has spurts of that, and he's got size and speed that he still he hasn't slowed down from I don't think he's slowed down from just an on-field performance perspective. It's the injuries, right? Last year he had multiple injuries.
And it's things like it's hamstrings and stuff.
Right.
He's now going to be 33 years old going into this season with a recent history of hamstring injuries, and that's got to be kind of scary.
So, something to keep an eye on. And then when you think about Evans, and it was like a team-friendly deal a couple years ago, but not, he's still getting paid. It wasn't like they were taking advantage of his loyalty or anything like that. But as you said, you always assumed he would be back with the Bucs. They did draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round last year. Chris Godwin is getting a little bit older. They have Jalen McMillan. So they have receivers. It's not like they need to have Evans back necessarily. They've gotten younger at that position. And the fact that he's already won a Super Bowl in Tampa, does that make it more likely that he goes and, does a little ring chasing for a couple of years, or less like? And again, it's not like the Bucs are a bad team. They'll be very much in the mix in the NFC South next year again. So I'm not sure how to get into his headspace and where he might land. But I think if Mike Evans is actually testing the market, then, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, he's still a very, very good wide receiver, and it's not, there's not a ton of those guys available in this wide receiver group, particularly, if Dallas is, as expected, franchise tag George Pickens, you're not finding another Mike Evans out there, really.
And then with all the Dolphins cuts yesterday, it is that time of year, Sam. As I said, in the X universe, formerly the Twitter sphere, it is that time of year where players who are nicked up, coming off of injury, and I'm going to say, intrigued by this guy.
Yes.
Intrigued by this reclamation project Sure, this guy hasn't walked in 3 years. Sure, he's heading into year 17 of his career, but I see that name. He was good in 2017.
Yeah, and when he did, he ran a 4.3, so Steve's in.
If you combine that with a 4.3, like if Will Fuller came out of retirement.
What you really want, I mean, Steve's ideal free agent is an oft-injured 4.3 receiver.
Will Fuller was perfect.
Yeah.
Buy low on this 4.3 player. Mm-hmm. Wait till you hear Rashid Shaheed hits the market officially in a couple weeks.
Let's go.
He might be this year's every team. Every team could use a Rashid Shaheed. Every team could use him. Talk about him in the free agent preview.
I think it's kind of like, it's a bit like the draft, actually. I think what Greg Rosenthal, or what you seem to be suggesting he was saying, is right, that it's actually, there's some depth to the free agent group. It's just that the stars aren't there. Like, you're not fixing things with free agency.
It's like when you look at lists.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I don't want to say like back in the day there used to be a million, but like.
But it's true.
And Ndamukong Suh hit free agency, right? I mean, there were big names that hit free agency.
There really aren't. Like, you basically don't get Albert Hainsworths anymore in terms of like that guy when he was hitting free agency was arguably coming into that free agent period. You could make the case that Albert Hainsworth was the best defensive tackle in the game. That's not happening anymore. Those guys are not hitting free agency anymore at any position. Like, when was the last time a guy hit free agency that you would genuinely make a good argument that's the best guy in the NFL at that position? It's really rare now. Like, it's just not. It's not the case.
But that's why we're going to talk cut candidates today.
Albert Hainsworth didn't exactly work out, so it's not like that was a great system. But the point is, those guys are not. It's changed. Teams have gotten better at dealing with that.
Ask in the chat if you're wearing creamsicle and what they see.
It's yellow. It's not orange. It's not. Creamsicle's way different color than this. Creamsicle's closer to your Giants thing.
No, that's ridiculous.
That's at least orange. It's just darker.
Burnt orange. That's closer to Texas burnt orange. All right, let's talk about yesterday and what we had going on here. And then, Will, am I going to go through the whole Wednesday update? We're going to do all that at the top. And then we'll talk Dolphins. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We got it. More Bucs news. I love this note from producer Will before we get into the Dolphins. Bucs linebacker Lavonte David, unsure whether he'll return next season for the third season in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's the new Brett Favre. We're giving Aaron Rodgers all this heat.
But he does it without drama. It's just,
he does.
He just shows back up one day ready to go to work.
Bucs linebacker situation last year. David, he's not the same player that he was even just 2 or 3 years ago, but still a dependable linebacker at this point in his career relative to others. The spot next to him had some issues, especially in coverage last year. There's a reason why at pick 15 we've had the Bucs often associated with Sonny Styles. It's a deep linebacker draft class. I think we're probably going to see a youth movement at the linebacker position for the Bucs this offseason, whether David returns or not. But again, these types of decisions, if you have 2 linebacker spots to fill rather than 1, makes a big difference. So we'll see what happens with David in the coming weeks here.
Yeah, and he can still play. I mean, it's not like this is a guy where every year it's the 1-year deal and eventually he's just getting worse and worse and worse and you're going to have to say goodbye. Lavonte David is still playing really good football and is still one of the better linebackers in the NFL. Like, he looks great still.
The franchise tag window is open. It's officially open.
Mm-hmm.
So players can be franchise tagged between now and March 3rd. So now you're going to start to see either players tagged, some long-term negotiations before that. But will they get tagged? Will they not get tagged? Rumors about whether or not they'll be tagged. We've got Adam Schefter saying the Seahawks are unlikely to tag Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III.
Yeah.
And they, as I mentioned, they have other work to do. The other quote was that they have multiple free agents that they want to retain and sign and also looking to extend wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba, so JSN in line for a big contract here this offseason as well. But Walker likely to hit the market as the draftniks hit the film room in recent weeks here. You're seeing far more people say it's Jeremiah Love, maybe his teammate at Notre Dame, Jadarian Price, maybe a little Jonah Coleman from Washington, if you like him, as I do. And it's maybe a little Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, but it's barren after that. Last year, remember, we talked about the depth at running back. You could find a Cam Skattebo in the 4th round. One of the stories of free agency Might be this running back class. Again, we'll break it all down tomorrow, but Kenneth Walker likely to hit free agency.
The franchise tag numbers are kind of funny. It's almost like every position is becoming the same number now. Like quarterbacks are obviously at a crazy amount of money. It's like $47 million, I think, for quarterbacks, the franchise tag number. But then wide receiver, linebacker, offensive line, which is still lumped together for some reason, defensive end, which is defensive tackle, those are all they were all separated by like $2 million, 28 to 26 million. And then cornerback and safety are a little bit behind at 21 and 20, actually 21 and a half and 21 effectively. And then the two undervalued positions are tight end and running back. And this is why the Seahawks are probably not too interested in signing Kenneth Walker to the franchise tag because, number one, it becomes a fully guaranteed amount of money on the salary cap at that $14.5 million. But number two, that number is the equivalent of making him the third best paid running back in the NFL, right? Immediately, just that franchise tag number. In terms of average per year, the only two running backs earning more than that really are Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Derrick Henry by a hair at 2 years, $30 million is 15 as opposed to 14.5. But you're basically making the guy the third highest paid guy in terms of APY, and that's not the case for some of these other positions.
And what's the linebacker number? You still have that?
So Renner posted about this. The NFL, this is one of the areas where the NFL itself is trapped in the dark ages of this inability to distinguish between linebackers and defensive ends and true edge rushers, right? The linebacker number is actually like $1 million higher than the defensive end number.
It's crazy.
Because they're still designating 3-4 outside linebackers as linebackers as opposed to edge rushers. And, it's crazy. Like, so they've got that, and they have offensive line all lumped together, which means if you want Tyler Linderbaum, right? If you want to franchise tag an interior offensive lineman, that guy's number is being dragged.
Tackle money.
Right. It's being dragged skyward by all the offensive tackles that get paid more. Like, it's the idea that those two things are lumped together and that linebacker and defensive end are still split out like that is a crazy, like, that's nuts. The NFLPA just gets rickrolled every time they go to the CBA because there's too many things to argue for.
That's the thing. Like, to be clear, we've talked about this on the show before, but it's a CBA thing, right? So we all say, logically, I saw our friend Lindsay Rhodes talking about it, like, hey, the NFLPA really needs to fight for this. But on their list of things to sort out,
they have to fight for 78 things.
It's so low.
They get wrecked and the problem is you can only really pay attention to like 3 of them. Yeah. You're going to get 3 of your deals, and then the NFL wins everywhere else.
They spent the last 2 CBAs trying to get less practice time, fewer hits to the head. They had to deal with player safety.
But also because
they had to deal with veterans getting paid more, the rookie contracts coming down. Low on their list is fairness with the franchise tag.
It's not even
that affects a handful of players every year.
That's the big thing. It's not even how far down their list it is. It's that it's very easy for the NFL to pull together a coherent strategy on every single issue because they only have to get 32 guys on the same page, or at least the majority of 32 guys.
Right.
The NFLPA has to try and get whatever that is, 3,000, thousands of members. I don't even know what their membership base is. They have to try and get thousands of members on the same page on a particular issue that, as you said, only affects a handful of them. So it's never going to happen, right? Like, there's so many players that will never care about this. So they're never going to have a particularly strong opinion on it. So they get owned in that, and they lose that, right? And that's the same thing for most of their manifesto is they just don't care enough about it relative to the NFL themselves, who have, this is what we want. We all want this. It's going to happen this way. The NFLPA is trying to focus on the 2 or 3 things that affect basically everybody, and so they just get owned every time they go to the negotiating table. I don't really see a way around that, but unfortunately, it's like every CBA is just, here are the couple of things that are going to change in a real fundamental way, and then we get to see the 15 ways that the NFLPA lost the negotiation that will have lasting impact for the next 10 years.
All right, other news. And look, every year we're going to say this is illogical. We hate this. Real fans know, but, it won't be changing probably anytime soon. Some quick Jaguars news, re-signing DJ Dallas, the running back, defensive lineman Matt Dickerson. The other big story that came out of Jacksonville is the report that the Jags plan to use Travis Hunter as a full-time cornerback and a part-time wide receiver in 2026. What were your initial thoughts on this report. Seems to make sense given where the roster construction is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, a few things. As you said, it makes sense given their needs. Number two, it's where most people assumed he would end up anyway at the start of the whole thing, right? If you were, we were talking in kind of abstract terms about what this guy could be as an NFL prospect, and ultimately most people assumed he will end up being, a full-time corner and some kind of part-time gimmick wide receiver because that's just the easiest thing to do at the NFL level. Obviously, they seem to have alternate plans, and they tried it. Now, the other thing is the last part of this is just a report from the outside kind of speculating, right? Yeah. It's not like the Jags come out and said this is what's happening to him. So my opinion on it is twofold. Number one, it kind of makes sense in that it's what everyone assumed would eventually happen to him anyway. But also, I wouldn't go overboard in that we don't know this is what the Jags are thinking. We just know this is what a reporter has said the Jags might be thinking and is kind of speculating.
Why would they lie?
I will say, people are already taking victory laps over this. This is what we said would happen. It's not like the guy's failed at either one of them. He looked like he was on the right track to be good at both, right? If this is a failure of Travis Hunter in any way, it's the physical one. It's like his body's just not going to stand up to doing both at a full-time level. But I don't think you can look at his season and say he's not capable of doing this, either one of them.
No, I think this is a win for the Jags. I think this is part of what makes.
I think this is a win.
Yeah, I think this is part of what makes Travis Hunter a potentially special player. Is the fact that we talked about it's not just within a game can you get 130 snaps out of him. I don't think that was ever going to be realistic. You and I went back and forth on that last year. Does he need to, because of the massive trade up that they made to go get Travis Hunter, does he need to be the equivalent of two players when it comes to snap count or usage? I said no, because my whole thought was, first off, if within a game he is more of a full-time type of corner and then a change of pace wide receiver, just from a football standpoint, that makes sense, right? It makes sense to go play 65 snaps at corner, 30 snaps at receiver, and you move him around, and because it's the nature of receiver. You don't play part-time corner, you play part-time receiver. And then the second part was the depth chart flexibility, because we also said some of his value was if they're deep at receiver, he moves to corner. If they're deep at corner, he could play receiver. If he struggles at one position, if he was awful at receiver, he could go to corner. So it's actually part of the value is the floor is raised with Travis Hunter. So I know we keep talking about the ceiling, and maybe the ceiling's 140 plays and two-way playing the same way he was at Colorado. But the floor is raised because he can likely start at least one of the two positions. And then you see what they did last year. They trade for Jacoby Myers. Trevor Lawrence takes off. The offense has completely changed. They still have Brian Thomas Jr. They still have Parker Washington. So they have good receivers. You sprinkle Hunter in as needed in a very deep receiving core all of a sudden. And now they have a cornerback need, right? They traded for Greg Newsome. He hits the market. They have a cornerback need that Travis Hunter can fill. So I think it makes perfect sense. He gives them the flexibility to explore a Jacoby Myers trade, find him, lock him up long term. And so the Jags have extra flexibility due to having Travis Hunter on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was always part of his value, all the flexibility that he brought in the various different ways he just outlined. I don't think that that's a particularly large – that to me was insulating against catastrophe. That raised the chances that this would work out in some way, shape, or form. It was effectively minimizing bust risk, which is – an important part of drafting these guys at the top of the draft, particularly drafting unique prospects. The more you can avoid that definitely flaming out in a terrible way, that's a good thing, right? I don't think, though, that justifies – the problem is they didn't just draft him at the top of the draft. They went and sent that package of picks to go get him. It cost them the number 5 overall pick, the number 36 overall pick, their first-round pick this year, which is where – and 126, wherever that was.
They're at 24 this year, I believe.
Right. So that's the 24th overall pick, the 5th overall pick last year, the 36th overall pick last year, and 126 last year. That's a lot to go get this guy. I don't think that the flexibility in any given year to be like, we've got a weakness here, you're going to shift to that side of the ball and be solid, or you're going to shift to this side of the ball and be solid. That's valuable, 100%. I don't think it's value to that degree. He needs to be some form of two-way player to a pretty high degree, I think, to make that trade make sense.
Yeah, to be clear, the totality of the trade, I'm generally anti-trade 3 picks for one player, and
right.
I'm usually against that. So I'm not saying that the pick is therefore the trade is therefore justified, but I'm more so saying he doesn't need to be a full-time two-way player in order to justify the trade. You still have to just maximize his skill set. And I'll just say, if he's a 90-snap player, 95, 100-snap player, and 65, 70% of that's at corner, I'm okay with that. That's what we all thought coming out. That's what Travis Hunter was going to do. And if that's where he lands, 100% corner, 30% receiver, 40% receiver, and he's just now what I would want differently in the usage pattern, I don't think he's a slot.
Which is what they were shifting to before. The irony of all this is he was just looking like he was about to take off at wide receiver when he got hurt. And all of a sudden, he's gone from, oh man, Travis Hunter's about to go to the moon as an offensive weapon to all of a sudden, according to this report, actually he's barely going to be playing wide receiver anymore.
So yeah, I didn't like the way they were using him at receiver as run some stick routes, run some shallow crosses out of the slot. I like him more outside, running more of the vertical route tree rather than the yak-centric, catch and run type of stuff that they were doing. They were moving to that, as you mentioned, but that's what I would like from Hunter. That's where his ball skills come in, because I think he's better. He's a better ball skill, ball tracker down the field type of player rather than a catch and run after the catch type of player.
The trade as it's currently constituted, by the way, Mason Graham, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, and the 24th overall pick for Cleveland now.
I mean, look, I said last year I thought Cleveland. It's not about winning the trade. It's not like there's a winner and the loser. I would choose Cleveland's side. I thought
always
it was
a winner and a loser.
Always a winner and a
loser.
Fence sitting Steve here says I love the move for Cleveland. Love the move for Cleveland. I get it from a Jacksonville's perspective, and they might feel happy about it if they do maximize Hunter's skill set here. But I think Cleveland needed to make that move, and that it was huge for them given where they are in their life cycle. Now, two of the picks being running backs and the whole thing where they have an entire offensive line that they need. We could question that, but I'm saying the move as a whole, I thought was great for the Browns. A win-win, Sam. Win for everyone. No, I think the Browns made the right move, and then for the Jags, all I'm saying is you don't need Hunter to play 140 snaps to justify the move. Playing this full-time corner, part-time receiver role, I think they'll settle in and get the best out of Travis Hunter.
If it happens, though, the way it's being described, I think it does indicate that they believe he's just physically not able to do that at the next level. Play 100 snaps a game, both sides of the ball.
By the way, he wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like they had him doing that, and I don't know if they ever said that he was going to.
Right.
I don't know if did you ever think that he was going to? Because I never really thought he was going to.
Not the way he did in college, like literally play every single snap, basically. But I did think the way they were talking and sort of slow playing him into this, I did feel like there was a world where they eventually got to the point where he was basically a full-time starter on both sides of the ball.
I never anticipated that. I thought full-time corner, part-time receiver makes too much football sense, and
he was averaging 80, let's say, right? In the games where he was actually being used both sides of the ball. Remember, there were a couple of games where he was like, they had an extra guy on one side of the ball, so he basically barely played on that side.
Right.
So he played 40-odd snaps. But the games where they were actually using him both sides, he was averaging like 80 snaps a game with him still being sort of eased into, all right, how's this going to work? Are we expanding his role
here?
So
you thought there could have been a build-up to eventual full-timeness.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I see that. I see the move they made for Jacoby Myers. They're happy with that. Look, the flexibility is it could change in 2 years.
Right, but the Greg Newsome thing, right? They brought him in, didn't necessarily work out the way they would have wanted. But, if Hunter hadn't gotten hurt, right, and Greg Newsome was kind of if Greg Newsome then leaves the depth chart, all right, they're probably promoting Travis Hunter to that full-time starting role. And obviously they're going to bring in another corner, but that guy's probably coming in as the 3. immediately that's probably giving him 20 more snaps a game, and you're talking about a 100-snap-a-game guy.
And I'm saying I think that's a justifiable role. Not so much for the trade, but for maximizing Hunter's value, a 100-snap type of player. Other quick news and notes. It's tough to have a strong opinion on any of these necessarily, but we'll mention them. Raiders hire Seahawks QB coach Andrew Giannacco as offensive coordinator. Seahawks hire 49ers tight end coach Brian Fleury as offensive coordinator as well. Interesting that the Seahawks go to the Shanahan. They steal from the division to go to the Shanahan tree for their offensive coordinator. The Raiders bringing in Giannacco. Again, I don't know. Do you have a strong opinion on either hire?
No, not really.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, that, like, Shanahan can't catch a break. Can't go a single year without somebody on his coaching staff getting poached.
Completely poached.
Even when they don't win the Super Bowl or go to the, deep into the playoffs, it's still going to have. Like, the Seahawks are the story coming out of this year, and yet Shanahan's system's still getting poached as much as anything.
Always. I'm always fascinated by that. I've done some limited studies, coaching studies and everything, and advised some college teams as far as coaching searches go and what have you. But
what I'd love to see?
At that level, the position group, like taking a position coach and projecting him to a coordinator role, I haven't gotten down that path yet, but interesting to see if we could find anything.
Yeah, everyone's, you see those old coaching trees, right? But they're almost always kind of done up in terms of successful coaches. Like, here's the successful coach that came from this coach, that came from this coach, that begat, blah, blah, blah. I would love to see one done up simply by volume. Who's the coach that's had just the largest number of coaches taken from his staff
That'd be a good one.
over the years? Because Shanahan and McVay have got to be pretty high on that list, right? Every year, those guys are losing one or two coaches to somewhere else, to promotions, to getting poached, blah, blah, blah. And they've both been there a long time now. So what is the total number of coaches that those two guys have had poached from their staff over the years?
The credit that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay get is the ability to either develop the next coaches or be so good at their job.
So
that
big
they can,
a part of it that it doesn't matter?
Yeah. But like McVay, both guys, there's been our friend Jordan Rodriguez has written some amazing stories and podcasts about what goes on behind the scenes.
Imagine what a pain that must be. Like, every year you've got to budget two guys getting taken from your staff and redoing the whole thing again. Like, it must be so annoying.
But Jordan has mentioned it's not like the way they run their operation. It's not like this dictatorship where they're doing 80% of the work and everyone else is just, ancillary, hanging out. They rely on people, right? Like McVay has, I remember when Zach was with the Rams, he's like, I'm in charge of third down, Not like he's calling the third down plays, but he's finding the best third and longs and third and medium plays. And and Jordan would highlight this idea that when one of these plays gets into the game plan, everybody's like, all right, I got my play into the game plan. Like, they're empowering people and then they end up losing them. Like, so they're developing, losing people, and then recycling and maintaining success.
And this is
which
why
is really impressive.
This is why they have to pay attention to, like, when Zach was hired by the Rams because Sean McVay saw a couple of his videos on PFF breaking down the Rams, and he was like, wow, that guy really understands what we're doing. Like, he's clearly smart. Let's talk to him, bring him in. Like, and it sort of seems crazy. Like, what is Sean McVay doing even watching that video? And it's because of stuff like this. It's because he knows every year he's going to lose two or three guys from his coaching staff. And if he doesn't find a Zach Robinson, from nowhere and bring him in, at some point you're going to run out of people, right? You're just not going to have the next man up to be able to recycle that. They actually need to be paying attention to who am I going to bring in to replace the guy that's inevitably going to leave the coaching staff. And either you do it with a guy that you plucked out of nowhere, or you do it with a retread like, let's bring Cliff Kingsbury back. We know, he's smart. Let's do that.
That's going to be an interesting one because it's a completely different system, thought process. So now you've got, like, are the Rams going to start implementing some air raid principles? Just a few.
Cliff, I'm afraid we've gone to 3 or 4 tight ends. You're going to have to, you may be unfamiliar with the tight end from your time.
So Cliff's like, could you? I was like, I can adjust to the tight end thing, but have you considered keeping them on the same side the entire time? Have you considered never flipping your formation?
What if the compromise is, we'll just use 2, I want to use 4, you want to use 0, so we'll split the difference and we'll run 12
and
personnel.
And the Y is your right tight end. He's no longer the Y.
Yeah, but
we'll
run
left and right tight end.
We'll split the difference and we'll run now base 12 personnel.
Perfect. Can't wait to see. Other news and notes: Browns hiring Falcons defensive pass game coordinator Mike Rutenberg as defensive coordinator. Again, don't have a strong opinion on that other than, okay, he comes from Jeff Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator there, so do you assume a similar type of system? Who knows? But Browns losing Jim Schwartz this offseason, big story with their turnover in the coaching staff there. And the Bills hired John Fox as senior assistant coach.
Really? I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Wow. What's John Fox been doing lately?
Hanging out. Now becoming...
Well, let's see what his Wikipedia page says.
Has he been with on some of the 33rd team?
John Fox was last. The last job... Okay, right? He was a head coach of the Chicago Bears from 2015 to 2017, right? Since 2017...
Since drafting Trubisky.
He has had 2 jobs, and they've both just been senior defensive assistant for the Indianapolis Colts and then the Detroit Lions in back-to-back seasons, which were... So he was on the street for 5 years, right? And then the Colts brought him back as a senior defensive assistant. The Lions looked at that and thought, you know what, that's shrewd. The Lions brought him in for a year as a senior defensive assistant, and then he's been on the shelf for 3 more years before the Bills are like, you know what we need? We need John Fox in the building.
Living the dream.
Wow.
Living the dream here. The thing that's interesting there is Joe Brady, first-time head coach, and a lot of time he's probably they're not using the same terminology as our friend Rick Spielman with the Jets. Mm-hmm. He's probably just a professional sounding board for first-time head coach Joe Brady.
Look, I think there's definite value to somebody had an article about this before, that like the number of these young, prodigy coaches who immediately connect themselves to like old veteran, been around the block multiple times, former head coaches.
Yep.
I mean, remember, one of the first things Sean McVay did was immediately hire or retain Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator. It's like you could not find 2 more diametrically opposed coaches than like grizzled old defensive coordinator veteran who's been around the block a million times, been a head coach before, and Sean McVay who's like 18 years old coming into this job. You know what I mean? But that was smart, right? It's like there's so many things that Wade Phillips just knows, has down pat, and you can immediately bounce off him. It's like, hey, what if I did this? Nah, it's a stupid idea. Don't bring that up. Like, it's smart. So, yeah, I think there's definite value to like a young first-time head coach having one of these guys on the staff somewhere. It doesn't even matter if it's a fake job,
Agreed.
Professional sounding board. Just bring him in, be able to go into his office and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and have a guy who could immediately go, no. Made that mistake before, don't do it. That's good.
It is good to have that level of experience, and I'm assuming that's where John Fox comes in for right. Joe Brady there. One other thing I wanted to mention before we talk Dolphins in more depth. The 49ers EMF Exposure. Are we gonna get the bugler on this thing? Give people the quick background on what's going on. They're next to the...
Have you got the original guy? Some guy posted an original tweet from his Substack, right? Now, as a history major, right? One of the things, history, and a master of journalism, one of the things they teach you in history
Never
is...
read someone's Substack.
No, it's to evaluate the source, right? That's the big thing they teach you in history that is a skill set that's being lost in the modern world, right? There's never been more information out there, so it's never been more important to evaluate the source of that information, right? Because it's not all equal, right? You could tweet all kinds of stuff about rugby, and if nobody looked into who you are and what you know, you'd be like, oh, look, here's a crazy opinion about rugby.
You don't think my offload opinions are worth it?
I'm just saying, I have a full and rich background of your rugby credentials, so I know what value to place on those rugby opinions. Other people might not, right? Unless they looked into it. So this guy who posted it, I can't remember what his name was, right? His Twitter handle, but it was something like, Sunlight Majesty, at Sunlight Majesty. And I'm like, all right, immediately I've got some questions, right? Immediately I'm reading this Substack with like, you know what? I'm not sure how much I'm going to pay attention to your take, right? Anyway.
Evaluating his handle.
He had this whole thing that was like the EMPs, it's degrading soft tissue, it's creating all these injuries in the 49ers. And basically, it's to blame for all of these injuries that the 49ers get every single year, right? Now, I'm not a high-grade scientist, so I haven't done the work myself. But I have watched a 30-minute video from one of those Twitter doctors. I can't remember his handle. Brian Sutterer, is that the guy's name? But he basically looked into it pretty exhaustively on a statistical level and was like, there is zero evidence for this whatsoever. Number one, the 49ers, as much as their injury history has been pretty bad the last couple of years, it hasn't even been the worst in the NFL. It's certainly not been like statistically so much worse than the rest of the NFL or the average that you'd be like, we got to find out what's going on here. This is like, clearly there is a magical dark force at work because you can't explain this by just this has been a rough couple of years. It's like a standard variance in the NFL. Number two, if you look at it in terms of, well, if this was a thing, you would immediately be able to see it by players coming into the 49ers and then leaving the 49ers. Or even if you say like it's a permanent problem, it degrades your tissues to the point where as soon as you arrive in San Francisco, you're just toast, right? You can't even see it in terms of players don't go from being healthy to permanently ruined by the 49ers. It's just not a thing. Statistically, it doesn't hold up to any form of scrutiny whatsoever. So as much as George Kittle is like, the tops of those trees near the substation look pretty ropey, and now they cut them down. What's up with that? Whatever's up with that is not, this isn't the reason the 49ers injury history has been as bad as it has the last couple of years.
Well done. I feel like we have investigated.
Yeah. He also looked at it like pre and post this substation, pre and post Shanahan. Like it was I need to find the guy's name. It's worth watching. It is worth also pointing out, though, that that's the guy I told you about. He did his own spreadsheets, and he had some of the most demented abbreviations I've ever seen in my life for NFL teams, which made me, again, evaluate the source. A little bit of a red flag, but I trust him more than I trust the guy who was like Sunshine 123 for his scientific opinions.
The problem with statistical analysis, let's say all injury data.
Yes.
Because some people will evaluate injury data based off, say, games missed.
And he adjusted for both of those. So it's,
yes.
Again, this is somebody.
The original guy adjusted?
No, the doctor, the guy who actually understands statistics and how to evaluate data, did that kind of stuff.
Say we wanted to get into let's get into a GOAT debate, Brady versus Mahomes, and you said games missed. And you could say Brady missed 15 games in 2008. Mahomes missed 3 games in 2025.
Yeah.
They had the same exact ACL injury. It just happened different times a year. So
Brian
you have to adjust for that.
MD is the guy who did the breakdown. He's got a YouTube channel with like 860,000 subscribers. He actually got some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
But he has a 30-minute video somewhere on this in which he concludes that it's basically scientific gibberish. And, again, doctor versus Sunshine Man.
Don't be hating on Sunshine.
I'm just saying, from an evaluate the source standpoint, right? Immediately you're questioning the source. And then apparently, according to a doctor who, works with data on a regular basis, the source is terrible. So, it tracks is what I'm saying.
The Bugler has spoken. All right, let's get to some of the Dolphins moves.
By the way, one last thing I wanted to bring up in the news section.
Oh, you've got more.
Yeah. Interim defensive coordinator Zach Kerr for the New England Patriots has had the interim removed. They've elevated Terrell Williams to a sort of senior position within the front office, and they've basically promoted Zach Kerr to the job that he was de facto doing all last season anyway. No news in that other than, obviously that's an expected move from their point of view. It's just funny because Stephen A. Smith thought the entire season that Terrell Williams was running the defense. And it was, he was talking about we didn't give him enough credit.
Not enough credit.
Well, the Patriots have given him credit by elevating him to the front office and then promoting the guy that was doing the work anyway into that job. So it's just move. Funny because Stephen A. didn't know any of that.
Good move by New England.
And probably still doesn't know any of that.
I'm sure they'll be breaking it all down to it today in the Shouty Shows. Terrell Williams. Good for him, by the way. I believe he was cancer-free.
Yeah, I mean, good for him first and foremost because the man
went
through a battle with cancer, apparently won, and that's great.
And them taking care of him with that role. And then Zach Kerr, great job by him. He goes from linebacker coach, fills in as defensive coordinator, and then gets the official promotion heading into next year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Miami Dolphins in the news this week. Toby, you got to let Benny in. Dolphins in the news this week. Kids are being pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just got locked out of the room. That's all. I don't know what this ad is, though.
Well, they're operating like the voice commands on the TV, which can't be a good thing.
Jeez, they're watching fashion music playlist from 2022. Go back to searching highlights.
He's not trying to watch that. He's just, the thing's struggling to translate from child.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you go let Benny in first? He's locked out. Thanks. All right. Dolphins have released Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
There were rumors. It had originally been reported that they were going to release Bradley Chubb.
Well, that was the first news domino to break. I think the Chubb thing broke first, but that's the one that's being delayed. And usually when that happens, when it's like, hey, this guy's getting cut, and then he's not cut yet, it's because somebody's phoned up and been like, hey, if we flipped you a 7th-round pick for this guy, would that get it done?
Has Raj allowed them to trade, 2031?
Oh, God.
7th rounder yet?
Well, usually that's the case. It's like they've discovered the news to cut this guy has actually prompted something of a trade market for them, and now they're hanging on to try and trade him.
It's also, James Daniels, former starting guard, played only 3 snaps last year. He's been injured each of the last 2 seasons, barely played. Nick Westbrook-Akina. So Dolphins, who they're clearing space. We've talked a lot about how they have not drafted often or in volume. They have been more of a veteran-laden team over the last few years, and that they're getting rid of some big names. It's really the only sport where this type of stuff happens, right? Where like big name players and even players who could still play. Tyreek Hill's a whole different case right now because he's hurt.
Right.
And Bradley Chubb, like he's on the decline, but he's not useless. Like
it's a pretty good year for him,
right?
Yeah.
Like he's still could be a solid player. Players who could still play just get straight up released for nothing,
for salary cap reasons,
right? Just for cap purposes. You don't see this really in other sports, as far as I know. But Dolphins had to make some of these moves. Let's start with Tyreek Hill. I know he was coming off not just a little leg injury, massive leg injury,
serious.
And most of the reports are he might, if he returns for 2026, it's very late in the season,
right,
if at all. And of course, a player depending on legitimate speed and quickness that no one else in the league has. Is this? We mentioned at the time, is this a career ender for Tyreek Hill? Like, how big is this injury?
That's the thing. I mean, I assume someone will sign him at some point to kick the tires and see what you have left, just because the ceiling is so high in terms of what he was as a player. But I mean, there's so much unknown. Like, he's 31 years old. He'll be 32 going into next season. He's coming off, as you said, that devastating knee injury. He is a player whose entire career has been characterized by speed and quickness, together in combination in basically a unique way, which might not exist anymore. I mean, that knee injury is the kind of thing that can rob you of, let's say, a yard of pace. If he's lost a step and he's not the same guy anymore, what is he? And then you have all the added element of, well, the off-field part of Tyreek Hill. Like, is he worth the headache? Even in Miami, you've had multiple instances of like, oh, Tyreek Hill's sounded off and the locker room's not happy and he's got to win back the group and blah, blah, blah. Well, now, like, do you want to bring that into your team if you don't know that he can be this elite number 1 wide receiver anymore? It's just such a gamble at this point that I would assume the only way any team brings him in is late in the process, once he's shown he's healthy.
Prove health,
and, and you can trust that he's not going to disrupt everything.
The one thing I've always wondered with Tyreek Hill, and we have these debates about receivers in particular and how they age. I know you always cite, you thought Randy Moss would age well because for multiple reasons, right? He's got incredible ball skills at worst. Why didn't Randy Moss become a great red zone threat, whatever it was? Or if you're so dependent on speed, and Tyreek Hill, like, he's a step faster than everybody.
Yeah.
Like, that's how he's played. So I've always wondered, if you're that much faster, can you lose 2 steps, so to speak, and still be viable? I do want it because Tyreek Hill, his entire career, would leave a game. He would come up with like a hamstring or something, and he'd be back 2 plays later. It always felt like his recovery was incredible. He would get banged up and just be right back out there. Every time he'd start limping, he'd be like, uh-oh, this is bad. Is this it? Nope, he's back out there, and he hasn't lost a step. I wonder if his recovery is just incredible here, and who knows? He's, as the chat was saying, he'd post himself running like a 4.3 in the middle of the season. It's like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's the off-field that you mentioned. What do you want to bring in? If he shows that he's healthy at some point, though, I think someone takes a flyer. It's once this happened, I know a lot of your casual fans, your average fans, who check in and out might think, oh, back to the Chiefs or back to reunion time. I don't think that type of stuff is going to be happening. Maybe if late in the season, if Kansas City's making a run and you get one last hurrah with Mahomes, I'll be interested to just see what he looks like coming out of this because, as I've said with Tyreek Hill, I think he is, can't say most unique. Is he the unique receiver in NFL history? I really believe top 5 deep threat in NFL history, and he could have been what we talk about with Wes Welker as like the quintessential slot receiver. I think he could have done both. I don't know if anyone else could do both the way that Tyreek Hill could.
That's why I think he will be really interesting as, like, I think he could, I mean, again, the Randy Moss thing has broken me so much, I'm not sure how much to talk about guys aging, but theoretically, Tyreek Hill should be able to age well even if he loses multiple steps, which is not usual for receivers that are built off speed because he's been both. He's been that deep threat, but he's also been the high volume underneath horizontal target as well, and both at the same time. And theoretically, even if he loses a step, even if he loses 2 steps, like he can still work the underneath, he can still work the middle, he can still work the slot, he can still do all the stuff that these like slot only type receivers in today's NFL can do. He's always been a good contested catch receiver. Like he's got, he's able to go get the ball in tight situations. He should be able to do that even if he doesn't have the speed anymore. But I think you're right. Like he might be the best combination of vertical elite straight line sprinting speed and immediate short area quickness in NFL history. Like I can't think of a guy who had a better combination of both those than he did.
And for Miami as a whole, as I put out there the other day, I think I mentioned on the show too, the fewest non-QB draft picks since 2022. They've had only 20 draft picks. We mentioned this on the show the other day, about 5 per year. And they went for Tyreek Hill. They went for Jalen Ramsey, and here they are. Having to get rid of a bunch of veterans. Of course, you've got the Hill injury. But a team that already had a lot of work to do apparently has even more work to do when it comes to replacing starters and offensive linemen and finding playmakers and the whole deal.
You look at that roster right now and you're like, man, is this the worst roster in the NFL for Miami? They have like a smattering of good players. And even the good players are sort of evenly distributed among the roster. Like you've got Jalen Waddle is a really good player at wide receiver. Devon Achane is a phenomenal player at running back. Aaron Brewer is coming off an amazing season at center in which he was, borderline all-pro / the best protector award that they gave out this year. Jordan Brooks had a good year this year at linebacker. Minka, obviously, they brought at safety. And then that's basically it, Like, other than that, Zach Sealer, I guess, is a much better player than he showed this season. But we are pretty low in terms of quality, established, high-end players on this entire roster, and everything else needs to be upgraded.
We'll get to it very shortly, the projected cuts from over the cap. Minka Fitzpatrick's on that as well as a potential.
Like even some of their best players might not be there.
Right. Bradley Chubb, again, it was reported as a thing, and maybe someone's going to trade for him, whatever it might be. I think there's a lot of players that I describe as low-end number 2 or high-end number 3. I think at this point in his career, if you have Bradley Chubb as your number 3 pass rusher, edge rusher, if you're a team like the Eagles that's trying to win a Super Bowl or a team like the Bills that are trying to win a Super Bowl, I think Bradley Chubb's a viable number 3. I don't know if you want much higher expectations for him at this point in his career.
I do think, Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap had highlighted him as an interesting trade candidate because there are reasons that a lot of teams would want Bradley Chubb. He's still only 29. He is coming off a pretty good season. Because Miami, because he's under contract, a team could potentially get a pretty team-friendly deal for at least a year out of him. I think it makes sense for a lot of teams to be quite interested in Bradley Chubb. So I think that's why it hasn't happened yet, because I assume Miami is going to be able to trade him. And that, I think, does make a lot of sense for teams. As you said, I think he's always been a little bit overrated, but he's a good player now. And a good player as a number 2, 3 pass rusher is valuable.
And we're overrated as in we went back. There were people trying to compare him to
He was like
Myles
the number 4
Garrett
overall pick or whatever it was, right? And then got traded for first round. Like his career has been always valued as if he was one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL. I don't think he's ever been that guy.
Right. He's been a good player. 30 years old. in 2026. Ancient.
Geriatric.
Heading into his 30-year-old season here. Anything else on Miami? Again, James Daniels is the classic. They got him in free agency a couple years ago. Injured player, that someone should kick the tires on. Who hasn't walked in a straight line in 2 years with injuries or whatever. But that I'll be like, James Daniels could be a starter for someone. If you have offensive line needs, the buy low on an injured James Daniels could be interesting. But out in Miami, where they have even more work to do now up front.
And all this was basically just to get them cap compliant,
Right. The other question, Tua Tagovailoa as a trade candidate, I saw, people are theorizing. Remember the Brock Osweiler trade, the first one of its time.
To buy a draft pick. Right.
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns they paid for Brock Osweiler, right? Traded for Brock Osweiler and got a draft pick. They essentially bought like a second-round draft pick.
Right.
From the Houston Texans to buy out the contract. Are we looking at something like that for Tua, where Miami has to give up a draft pick just to take Tua off their hands?
I would assume so. Like I don't see any other reason a team would trade for that contract. I think it was Brett Coleman was speculating that the Titans should do this. They should buy the draft pick, and basically they've got the most cap space in the NFL by a significant margin. They've got a lot of places that they need to spend it, but as we said, it's a free agent class without necessarily a ton of stars. Even if you wanted to go on a crazy free agent spending spree this year, I don't think you're really getting rid of all of that cap space. So if you looked at this and said, where can we get another draft pick from? Let's bring on Tua's contract. Clearly, he's not coming in to challenge Cam Ward. Cam Ward's the starter there. Tua would be your backup. You could theoretically buy a draft pick for that.
All right, let's get to some cut candidates and other names that we're going to need to know. But first, if you ever wanted to go to the NBA Finals, well, now's your chance, courtesy of FanDuel. All you have to do is use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. NBA Futures lets you lock in your pick for who you think will go all the way, whether it's a team to win the championship or a conference title. You can visit FanDuel.com/3030 to get started. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. No purchase necessary. Limit one entry. For Profit Boost token only. Opt-in required. Must apply Profit Boost token on select markets. Restrictions apply. See full terms, including methods of entry at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Today, Sam, we're going to give you some NBA championship odds.
Okay.
I'm going to phone Harry in from the cruise because he's my family NBA expert as a fantasy player.
There was a time when I followed the NBA. That time was longer than a decade ago.
This is perfect.
And I honestly don't know if I could name maybe I could 10. I don't know if I could name 10 NBA players anymore.
Well, I'll give you some NBA championship odds.
Perfect.
And then we'll talk through it. The Thunder are plus 135.
No.
The Nuggets plus 550.
Okay.
Jokic coming back off his injury
MVP.
here. Yeah. Spurs plus 1,100. Wemby.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to name players.
Sure.
The Knicks are plus 1,300.
Not a chance. Sorry,
Celtics
Harrison.
plus 1,300. And then the Pistons plus 1,300. Our friend Mitch Kaiser, diehard Pistons fan, who battled through the dark days of Pistons fandom.
Well, he must.
All of a sudden,
unfortunately, he would have come along right after they were.
I'm talking like the most recent, like a few years ago, they were one of the worst, if not the worst.
Yeah,
team
but
in
that's
the
what I'm
NBA.
saying.
Now
He would have come
they're
along
sitting
right after they were good.
Yeah,
age-wise,
Oh yeah. He missed
the good times.
He missed the bad boys.
Yeah.
Then they were
missed two different good times.
and then the one.
Right.
They were like the one anomaly championship where they didn't have the superstars. Right.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna go with the hometown Celtics.
Naturally.
Former hometown Celtics.
Right.
I don't know if Jason Tatum's going to come back or not.
Who knows?
But if he does,
Big X factor.
making a run here.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Nuggets.
You get the Nuggets at plus 550.
Because Jokic.
Jokic is the best player in the NBA. Dude's incredible. So FanDuel.com/33rd, NBA experts here.
I'm a big fan of players who are amazing at what they do and seemingly despise the career that they've been put in. Like Jokic just wants to go home and run his little horse things, right?
Just wants to be on the horse ranch.
Right. Hates the fact that he's the best basketball player in the world. I love that. You know, like Ronnie O'Sullivan at snooker seemed to, for a long periods of time, basically despised the fact that he was the best snooker player in the world. It's like, man, I'd love to be doing anything other than this, but apparently I'm the best at this in the world, so I have to go there and just beat everybody that spends their entire life practicing. I have to crush them, win the thing, and then go home. I love that. I think it's funny.
Love it. There it is.
Like, imagine if Tom Brady just hated football.
Get in on the action.
You know, if Brady just hated football, but was like, another season where I got to go back and wreck all these, scumbags and then go back to whatever I actually like doing in the off season.
Before we get to the cut candidates, update on the children. They are now watching Pro Bowl highlights.
Well, I saw earlier the.
You have a better view of what they're watching. What has been going on over there?
So they're trying to use the audio thing, like the text or the command.
They speak into things.
Problem is, it doesn't have a great appreciation for child. So at one point, they were trying to get Reds games on, and Reds games was showing up as Redskins highlights. So there's been some.
I was wondering how that ended up on.
There's been some unfortunate mistranslations in the tech.
Somehow they landed on this year. I saw Shadur over there. Somehow we're on Shadur Pro Bowl highlights right now.
Yeah. I don't know where we got. I don't know how we got from 80s Redskins highlights to this year's Pro Bowl, but that's where it's happened.
That's great. All right, let's go to cut candidates. Tomorrow we'll have the full free agency breakdown, and this is kind of like a preview of the preview because some of these names could be free agents. Nick Corti, Over the Cap. He does this article every year. He does a great job for Over the Cap. That's Jason's sidekick over there. Nick is he's just an even, I don't want to say bigger cap expert. His expertise is around comp picks and the comp pick formula. Like, he reverse engineered the comp pick formula, and everything that he does some great work at Over the Cap. And so he puts this list together every year, which, by the way, I took some heat for mentioning one of the players that's Nick's fault. Remember a couple years ago when I just offhand mentioned David Njoku as a potential cut candidate because he landed on this list of 100?
Right.
And everybody's like, "You idiot!" And then they tagged him, and Nick's like, Njoku's like, "You're an idiot." Blah. They got it. It's Nick's fault for that, for the heat I took. But he does a really good job of giving. What's the column title? Odds of negative fate.
Yeah, odds of negative fate. So I was just looking into this, trying to find out what it is. He's got there's a little page that explains the contract fate thing. Will I read the methodology? It's a little long.
I'm gonna give you the methodology for the article. I think that's more important.
Okay.
So it's a list of 100 players who are due a minimum of $4 million in cash, who have a negative contract fate greater than 50%.
Now, those amongst you might be asking what that is.
No, we got some circular definitions here because we haven't defined that. But the last one is within. They have. Over the Cap has their own valuation model based off production and whether or not a player is, producing above or below what they're making. So these are players that are below, right? So it's like a somewhat formulaic approach of this guy's due a lot of money, he's not living up to it, and then they put this odds of negative fate on there.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to give a quick explainer?
Okay, so I'm going to try and paraphrase the methodology because it's kind of long. So basically, they took all of the contracts in their database since 2011 that were signed in which the inactive contracts. So basically, contracts that ended up, not existing anymore as time worked on, in which the player was a vested veteran and, firmly. So there's 2,000 of these contracts, and then they bucketed them into 5 different buckets. The contract was terminated. The player took a pay cut. The contract expired. The player got a pay raise, or he got extended, right? So those are basically the 5 ways that a contract can end. They determined the first 2 of them are negative contract fates, right? You get cut, or you get forced to take a pay cut. And the last 2 are positive contract outcomes to the player. You get a pay raise, or you get an extension. And then the middle one, the expired contract, is basically just seen as a wash, right? No harm, no foul. We walk away at the end of the deal. So basically that's using all of these prior contracts. They look at where the money is allocated and how the player is, and decide how likely it is that they're going to get cut and or have to take a pay cut.
Beautiful. So the article is it's defaulted to sort by the negative valuation in their production model. If you sort by odds of negative fate, you get 100% odds of negative fate for Dolphins kicker Jason Sanders. Rest in peace. Guess he's getting cut. So it's a great article to just look at percentage chance that these players are going to be back. And again, it's a part of the NFL, and it's a part of when these contracts are signed. There's the real contract, and then there's the out, right? There's the potential out, and a lot of these potential outs, if it's supposed to be a 4-year deal, it ends up being 2. It's a 5-year deal, it ends up being 3. And you just kind of know when there's a tipping point when it just makes more sense to release a player rather than pay them. So Jason Sanders, rest in peace, 100% odds of negative fate. The next two, when you sort...
100% is pretty high.
It is.
Yeah.
Can't get much higher than that. I just highlighted some names that are interesting. How do you want to go through this?
I go through your interesting names. Let's do it.
Interesting names by the odds of negative fate. 2 running backs after Jason Sanders, DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard. Swift with the Bears, Tony Pollard with the Titans. So you have Swift, who I think just had his best season.
Yeah.
He looked very good running the ball in Ben Johnson's offense.
Is only 27 years old.
Yeah.
This was a sort of turn the corner year for him in terms of like a guy that's always had talent, but all of a sudden looked like he had vision and, could operate within the system and be a high impact running back for them.
Now he's due $7.5 million
Yep.
in cash in 2026. It's actually not an egregious number.
Right.
In the 1-2 punch of him and Kyle Monangai, you might say, we want Monangai to take more carries, but I mean,
that's half the franchise number that we were talking about earlier for Kenneth Walker.
And given the uncertainty in the running back draft class that we talked about, like it's a 3 or 4 running back deep class, not like 10 to 12 like it was last year. And it's also a big free agent class with guys like Ken Walker out there. So I don't know. I think Swift, is he going to be some value potentially? And then Tony Pollard with the Titans, similar. Like he's had good spurts of play across, his time with the Cowboys and with the Titans. They have Tajay Spears still. We'll see what happens with Tony Pollard. But both guys at 81%.
Yeah.
They're the second and third highest, respectively, or tied for second highest.
Pollard, he's a couple of years older, a few more miles on the clock and stuff. So that one, I think, makes a bit more sense, particularly for a Titans team that's rebuilding and, on the way. They're in a different life cycle than the Bears. The DeAndre Swift one is interesting, though, because he is a couple of years younger, because the number isn't crazy, and because it did look like he had completely turned a corner within this offense. And if that's something that the Ben Johnson coaching staff is, if they fixed him, quote unquote, like if he's turned into the player that he was always supposed to be, but never looked like he'd actually achieved in other spots, it's an interesting guy to let walk to then have to bring in somebody else and hope that guy can do what DeAndre Swift did, even if Monangai becomes, the alpha running back in that backfield. That would be a gamble.
All right, some other names that caught my eye on this list. Marlon Humphrey, from the Baltimore Ravens. He's been a little up and down the last couple of years. He has played inside and outside, right? He's played outside. He's been that do-it-all slot type of player. He's not playing the slot like a Kyle Hamilton is, but ability to cover slot receivers and cover on the outside. He's 30 years old, though. That used to kind of be the tipping point. So I'll lump these two together. Marlon Humphrey, Ravens, Marshawn Lattimore, Commanders, 2 30-year-olds, former first-round picks who have had excellent careers, and they're both in this almost 79+% chance of being cut. Lattimore is probably more clear. He felt more like the Cliff candidate, right? Like as soon as...
Well, he's 30 with an extensive injury history that seems to have robbed him of being the player that he used to be.
As soon as Washington traded for him, it felt like, he's just not the same player. Humphrey, again, he's, last year he was pretty good. In 24, 25 was not as good. But for other teams that have cornerback needs, I would say Humphrey in particular is an interesting name.
Yeah, these the ages that we're using are ages heading into next season. So I don't think Marlon Humphrey is technically 30 yet, but he will be by the time the season rolls around. So
that's all that may what they are at the season is what.
Just for anybody who's like, Humphrey's not 30 yet. He's 30 next season, which is the point.
Football age. We're looking at football age.
He's had a weird career where there was a couple of year stretch where he was like the best, versatile slot, dynamic corner that could play inside or outside was a real weapon within that Ravens defense. The last couple of years haven't looked like that, and at times he's been picked on and, given up some real big plays. He's one of the guys, this is hardly unique to Marlon Humphrey, but he's one of the guys that struggled the most going up against Jamar Chase. Earlier in his career, he had some struggles as well. So it's a very narrow band of time where Marlon Humphrey looked amazing. And outside of that, there have been some real struggles.
All right, let's go through some other. Elton Jenkins.
Yeah.
For the Packers. And so what's going to happen, and part of the reason why we have to push, not even push, but we'll do our team building series the week after the Combine once a lot of this stuff is sorted out. Green Bay already has left tackle Rasheed Walker hitting free agency, Zach Tom's coming off a lot of injuries at right tackle. They already have some questions up front, and Jenkins has been probably their best lineman over the last few years in the ability to play center, to play guard. So, he's due $20 million in cash this year. He's at 78.6% fate over here in the OTC article. And Jenkins has been a very good player, but he's battled his injuries.
Yeah, and, I think he was a victim of his own versatility, where the Packers ended up shoehorning him into just the spot that they needed upgrading the most, and that's not necessarily where he's been at his best. Elton Jenkins, to me, if I was a team with an acute offensive line need in a variety of different areas, Elton Jenkins would be one of the first names I'd be.
Your Chargers.
Yeah, I'd be circling, Elton Jenkins' name and for a lot of teams.
Chargers need a center and a guard.
That's the guy I want to go after. I wouldn't want to play him at center if I could avoid it, but the fact that he's that versatile, has been that good at multiple positions, and is not, is not particularly old, not particularly. He's absolutely a guy. I think it makes sense for the Packers to be we can get cheaper and move on from this contract. But for other teams out there, they should be dude, this is not a guy that rolls around very often.
Blake Cashman for the Vikings. He had a couple good years at linebacker from Minnesota. I think of teams like the Carolina Panthers, who might have a linebacker need, and then probably you don't want to have two young drafted linebackers, even though it's a really good draft class. I wonder if Carolina would be a good fit for a Blake Cashman type. Jesse Bates is pretty high on this list. I just did our friend Paul Dehner's podcast yesterday, The Growler, and he brought up Jesse Bates, right? The debate that I had, we talk about positional value all the time, and you and I make the point, if you have an elite player, it does offset things. And when you look at positional value from a macro sense, safety's low. And then you have these acute examples like the Cincinnati Bengals, whose defense has not been the same since Jesse Bates.
Not just not been the same, but it's gone from a good unit to being the worst unit in the NFL the second Jesse Bates walked out the door.
So, look, we're not going to mention every team and every team need here. I mentioned the Panthers. I mentioned the Chargers maybe for Jenkins. The Bengals are going to be really interesting in this cut list here because Malik Hooker is on it, Cowboys safety. Jesse Bates is on it. And if you're Cincinnati,
Grant Delpit,
who's been just, unbelievable covering tight ends and versatility that he showed in that Browns defense. The Bengals are going to be really interesting here as they debate, Caleb Downs at 10 and these debates that we have on our show all the time. Malik Hooker, more of a true free safety. Jesse Bates, more of a true free safety. Grant Delpit would play more of that Caleb Downs, move around in and around the line of scrimmage type of role. If you're a team like Cincinnati that has a massive safety need, especially if you're debating drafting a Caleb Downs, do you look at these cut candidates, especially bringing a Jesse Bates back, to captain that defense? I think at safety, even as you get older, just getting players in the right position, the communication, everything that they bring, I think that's going to be intriguing for certain teams. But Cincinnati just comes to mind when it comes to some of these safeties that are on the list.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the Vikings are a really interesting team in this list for a couple of reasons. Number one, they have the second most players on it, with 7, I think. Number two, because of what they've just done this offseason in terms of getting rid of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and working with an interim GM, and a lot of reports suggesting that the coaching staff, A, had a lot of personnel power to begin with, and B, are likely to assume even more of it, at least in the short term, while it's a sort of power vacuum, right? And I assume that power will be, I assume, 3 different people will probably, or 4 different people maybe, will probably take on some of that power, hoover up some of that power. You will have Rob Brzezinski, who's been like the cap guy and is effectively sort of stepping into this interim GM role to kind of manage things. People have been talking about Ryan Grigson, who's a former GM who just has been on the staff and may assume more of a role. And then the 2 coaches, Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, who will assume more responsibility. I assume all 4 of those guys will hoover up some degree of Kwesi's power during this process. But in particular, the 2 coaches. So Blake Cashman, one of the top guys on your list. Cashman makes a big difference to that defense, one that seems to be pretty powerful in terms of, the on-off splits, wit out type of deal, however noisy that always is. Blake Cashman seemed to make a difference to that defense anytime he was on and when he wasn't. One of the other guys pretty high on this list is Isaiah Rodgers, who has been their best corner. The point is, do the Vikings start to make moves that would be seen as bad, unconventional moves if they were personnel guy driven? Like if the standard GM was operating, what would he do? Well, this is a business. It's ruthless. We got to get rid of guys even if they're good because the numbers say. Flores doesn't care about that. Flores is like, I'm not getting rid of my linebacker that lets me do X, Y, and Z and is a really important part of the chemistry and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, pay that guy his money and keep him in the building. You know what I mean? Same thing with Isaiah Rodgers. Like, do they start to make moves that other teams wouldn't be making because the coaches have a ton more power now?
It's a great point. We should have Matt Collar on as well to discuss. Now, I keep saying that. We'll have Matt on the show. We'll see him at the Combine next week, probably do some of his shows too.
Javon Hargrave is pretty high on the list too.
Who else do the Vikings? Because I want to talk Commanders. They have a ton of names.
Those 3 that I just talked about. Aaron Jones, the running back, is over 50%. Jonathan Grenard is at 50%. I would imagine there's no chance they let him go.
I think he'll be back. Yeah.
Brian Kelly is actually pretty high, even though they just signed him. He's an interesting one just because of the injury history that he's got, the concussion history, really. I think is that all their names? Anyway, that's the list.
It's a really interesting dynamic that you bring up about the coaches having power and how every time I hear coaches talk about players, they talk about the fit and the role and what you just said. I mean, I've heard about offensive coaches saying, this receiver doesn't block. This receiver doesn't run the routes I need him to run. And they neglect seemingly better receivers just to get the guy that they, like a DeMarcus Robinson type or whoever it is that's just going to fill the spot, right, and do the things that they ask.
That's not there.
The question with the Vikings, though, is did Flores always have that power?
Yeah.
Did KOC always have that power, or is that different? Is that part of the reason why Kwesi's gone, is he didn't really have any power anyway, and it was always Flores.
But it's not their job. The coaches, it's not their job, and therefore they shouldn't really care about the budget. Right, the salary cap. Like
right.
Somebody else's gig to make it fit. Right, my job is just this guy's a good player. I want him on my defense, and if that guy suddenly has the power to say yes or no, well, that changes everything. Obviously, the more power you have, like the guy with the final say over the 53 actually does need to care about the salary cap because that's how you fit your 53 together. Right, so John Harbaugh in New York, for example, like he can't be like, I don't care about the salary cap because you're responsible for assembling the 53, and if you don't care about the salary cap, you're not going to be able to assemble a 53. But for guys that haven't had necessarily that final say and all of a sudden have more power in that 53, it'll just be interesting to see if those guys start to lean towards, keep the guy when it's an iffy 50-50 type of thing or let him walk.
Commanders are an interesting team on this list. I was going by players, but then you see the Commanders have Frankie Louvu, Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Tyler Biadasz, Nick Allegretti. That's 4 starters there.
Yeah.
Just above 65% on this list. And again, when we talk about like the teams that we call winners in a couple weeks, when we go through the free agency stuff, are the teams that are probably cutting people in a year or two.
Yeah.
The Commanders used all of these free agent signings in the 2024 season, just last year, to go to the NFC Championship. Frankie Louvu, fantastic player and versatile player. Dorrance Armstrong, a good pass rusher as in a rotation. Biadasz, I thought, was an outstanding free agent signing a couple years ago to just get a dependable, reliable center in there. Allegretti, again, a starting caliber guard. And so, look, we don't. And I already mentioned Marshawn Lattimore. All those 5 players just from the Commanders alone, above the 65% mark as far as potential negative fate goes. And I think the Commanders have other trench questions, especially on the defensive line. So we'll see what happens, see where it lands. But those names are intriguing to see who they can keep. But also for other teams, a guy like Luvu, he brings a lot of versatility to the defense.
Luvu and Armstrong in particular, I mean, they're, again, classic. Like, if the coach was making this call, I think both those guys would be staying. Like, Dorrance Armstrong's been their best pass rusher for the last couple of years, albeit missed a lot of time this season. But in a per-snap basis, I think he was probably their best pass rusher. And Frankie Luvu, a bit like Blake Cashman, like you would imagine a coach banging the table for keeping Frankie Luvu around. You watch that guy play, and he brings that physical intensity. Like, he hits differently to most people in the NFL. I would imagine a coach not wanting to let that guy leave the building. And yet, this is not his first team in the NFL. Like, another team's already moved on from Frankie Luvu. So it's an interesting – those guys are interesting examples, I think, of how it doesn't – just because you're a potential cut candidate or a cap casualty or however you want to phrase these, like, it doesn't mean these are not good players.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't play.
Like, some guys are going to get cut because they're done, right? Marshawn Lattimore might be done. He looks he looks a shell of himself right now. He's 30 years old. That looks like a guy who you're getting rid of because you don't think he's worth paying a significant amount of money anymore. There are other guys, though, who are absolutely worth paying and being on a roster, just not necessarily the team that they have him for right now.
All right, a couple of other names on this potential cut list that stood out to me. We've got Josh Jacobs, Packers running back here, who's been a great addition for Green Bay these last couple of years. The running back market is going to be fascinating because of a decent group of free agents, the DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, and Josh Jacobs, who I just mentioned as all potential cut candidates. Maybe the biggest name on the list for me, DeForest Buckner. I mean, Tyreek Hill's on this list. He already got cut, but
right.
DeForest Buckner for the Colts. I got him and Jake Matthews as the most consistent players in the NFL. That's how I would rank them. There has not been a more consistent, dependable 2 players in the NFL than Jake Matthews, the Falcons left tackle, DeForest Buckner, the Colts defensive tackle. Buckner did miss time this year, played only 482 snaps, played only 600 last year, so a little bit more banged up than we had seen from him. He was 4 years over 1,000 snaps, which is insane for a defensive tackle. Remember, he was doing that in college. We used to talk about his workload at Oregon, playing 800-plus snaps. He has been extremely durable. Last 2 years, taken a little bit of a hit from a durability perspective. Last year, maybe his worst season, one of his worst seasons since his rookie year, but I still love Buckner. I think he is.
And those two things they're interestingly connected. This is a guy that's played a lot of football in his career. Again, combining college and the NFL. Like, this dude has gone through some serious mileage. And all of a sudden, 31, 32 years old, the body starts to break down. Like, is this him done? Is this the beginning of the end?
Steve's in, man. Steve's intrigued. Steve's going to be – that's me. This is the guy I'm going to be saying. Look, I think he's fine in Indy. Like, if they hold on to him, an important piece of their defensive line rotation. But if they did cut him,
he's like, you ever see that guy?
Teams, I want DeForest Buckner on my team.
You ever see that guy that's got like a 1985 Porsche Turbo and it's got like 400,000 miles on it or something, right? He's just been daily driving this thing since like 1985 when he bought it new off the lot. Like, DeForest Buckner is that Porsche. Theoretically, you change the belts and you can go on forever, right? On the other hand, the second it throws a serious problem, maybe this is it. Maybe the car's on its way out now. I think that's a pretty interesting one for Buckner. Like, he's on quite a lot of money. Do the Colts decide that, you know what, given the amount he's played, this is kind of it for him. He's on the way.
I've gone through a bunch of NFL players the last couple of years, just giving a film eval the same way I would draft prospects, because in our job we don't do that as much, right? You evaluate the draft prospect and watch him in the NFL, but you don't go snap for snap like we would. Watching Buckner snap for snap and how his length, he's still a wrecking ball as recently as 2024 and early in 25. Still a wrecking ball, still has good movement skills and speed. Pad level was a question for him coming out because he's 6'7", way back during draft time. It pops up every now and then, but he's far more disruptive than he is getting moved off the ball. So he's still very good in the run game, very good as a pass rusher. Then the thing I've always said since we've been doing free agency analysis, when these defensive linemen get into their 30s, I said this about Ndamukong Suh and Dwight Freeney back in the day. I wonder what happens if you do decrease the workload.
Yeah.
Can they age better instead of saying you're going to play 800, 900 snaps by just you're going to play 600, and that's going to be your role. And so I don't know if we're there yet in Buckner's career, but if you don't want him to play 8 or 900, play 30 snaps a game, play 35 snaps a game, and I think he could still get after the quarterback, move around the defensive line, and be a really disruptive player.
I mean, you might not even need to do that in today's NFL. Like, all the focus is on how these quarterbacks are aging amazingly. Look at them play into their 40s. But, like, Cameron Hayward is playing the best football of his career still at 36, 37 years old. There's been a bunch of these defensive tackles all of a sudden that are aging incredibly well and playing, like, their best football the wrong side of 30. So maybe this is just as much as we're busy writing DeForest Buckner's eulogy because he got injured the last couple of years.
I'm not writing his eulogy. I told you.
Theoretically.
He could still play. So we'll see. I mean, he's at 63% potential cut candidate here. I would keep him.
Of course. Always.
Who else do we have here that I highlighted? I mean, there's other good names. Look, free agency. Here's what's going to happen from a team perspective. A team like the Commanders, if 3 or 4 of these guys get cut, that's 3 or 4 starting spots, and all of a sudden the team looks thinner. They only drafted 5 times last year, and it's just not going to feel great. When we evaluate teams going into the season, it's about, did they eliminate question marks? Can they go into the draft without question marks? That's what I'll be keeping an eye on more than anything over these next few weeks. Can you go into the draft without needing 2 starting corners, without needing 3 defensive linemen? Can you go into the draft without major needs? And I think that's where the movement over these next couple of weeks is crucial, even if there aren't superstars available when it comes to free agency.
Yeah.
All right, couple names. Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed with the Titans. I think I've been eyeing the Sneed cut for a while here. He just hasn't looked like the same player for the Titans. That's going to look like a pretty bad contract coming off of a nice start to his career with the Chiefs. Calvin Ridley with the Titans. He's 32 now, by the way. Mm-hmm. Ridley came in as a 23-year-old. I've been pretty consistent with him as I think he could still be a 2.
Yeah.
But you're talking about him, over $21 million in cash due this year.
Yeah. Like, these are just, Sneed has been, I think, a complete catastrophe as a signing signing for them. It just hasn't worked out the way they assumed it would. The injuries, I think, has been a huge part of that. He's just not the guy that he was early in his career in Kansas City. I don't think it's a case if he was just a product of that defense and the whole thing was smoke and mirrors and he was never good. I think he's just not the same player anymore. Calvin Ridley at 32, it's like 32-year-old plus $23 million equals cap casualty.
By the way, just to clarify, for context here that nobody cares about.
No.
I'm ready for my anti-context rant that has hit the interweb over the last few weeks more than ever. I'm not, this is Nick's fault. Nick put this list together. This is Nick from Over the Cap. Steve's not predicting your favorite players getting cut from your favorite team. I'm not predicting that. I'm merely passing along fate percentages that Nick put together. Don't you clip me out of context and say, oh, you said DeForest Buckner's definitely getting cut, you idiot. Colts are going to the Super Bowl. Don't you do that to me. Just passing it along. So Bears fans, Jalen Johnson's on the list.
Yeah, that's not happening.
He's only 27. I don't see it happening either. He's only 27. Just put percentages on it. Micah Fitzpatrick, he's a little bit lower. He's down closer to 50%. But Micah Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins just traded for him last year in the Jalen Ramsey trade.
Yeah, and because they just traded for him, I feel like that's unlikely to happen, but I guess it's possible. The name I think that's most interesting on this list is Deshaun Watson, just because, again, this the single worst move that's ever been made.
It's by default. Like, he didn't play, so he's negative.
No, but
valuation.
We are also reaching the point in this contract where it's possible.
It's doable.
Right? Like, we've been stuck in this. The Browns have been trapped in this world. where they are stuck with Watson because of this unique, fully guaranteed contract and the dead money just off the charts, insane, and blah, blah, blah. We are finally reaching the point in this deal where it's at least possible. Now, it would have to be a post-June 1st designation. If you did it pre-June 1st, his dead cap hit is $131 million. So that's still unlikely.
And the difference between pre and post-June 1st, which is a designation, not like it has to happen on that day. It's about
spreading the money, spreading the hit.
So if it's pre-June 1st, all of it hits next year's cap. If it's post-June 1st, it gets spread out over the life of the contract.
Right. And because where the Browns are in terms of their salary cap, I still think it's extremely unlikely because even post-June 1st, it's an $80 million hit, and the Browns they're not exactly swimming in cap space right now. So they would have to do a lot to shift space just to eat the dead hit of shipping him away post-June 1st, let alone pre-June 1st. But I think it's interesting because we're at least reaching the point in this cycle where Deshaun Watson can finally begin to be moved somewhere, even if it's to the street. In this world of like, Todd Monken's in. Does Todd Monken kick the tires on Deshaun Watson, see if he can resuscitate his career right at the time where he's starting to become, actually, we can finally get rid of this guy if it doesn't work out? It's just an interesting time in the cycle of that contract now.
All right, a couple other names. There's a bunch of running backs on here. We already mentioned a few, but Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, who you mentioned, James Conner coming off of his injury, Joe Mixon coming off of his injury. All of those running backs are over 30 now, by the way, if you want to feel old.
Mysterious injury for Joe Mixon.
The last time, I feel like Kamara's lost a step over the last couple years. I think Aaron Jones still has something left. I think Conner still has something left. I think Mixon's coming off the injury. I don't know how that affects him, but the last time we saw him with Houston in 2024, I thought he looked really good, relative for his age, for an ancient 30-year-old. So, again, the running back market this offseason and some of the movement is going to be fascinating because there are some decent names available, there are some retread names available, and there's just a handful of draftable running backs on the first, in the first 3 rounds.
The running back thing is interesting because it's the perfect encapsulation of this whole what are cut candidates, like how does it work? Basically, all of the potential running backs on this list, they're all still really good players. It's just that they're either aging and they're due a lot of money, and teams don't like that. So they try to get rid of their running backs.
I mean, of all the positions that hit walls, you mentioned Cam Hayward. There's some positions that you can age gracefully. It's harder at running back. It's harder at receiver. It's harder at corner. It's harder at these positions where if you do lose half a step, you might be done, and you can't win on just guile.
Right. But you just see
at running back like you can maybe some other positions.
You just see what the game is here, right? This idea of the NFL as a business. Nowhere do you see that more clearly than running back, where the goal is always to be a year early rather than a year late, right? That's what every team is trying to do. So that's why you see good players getting released or cut or asked to take a pay cut, because the team looks at it and they say, there's a chance this guy's on the way down. And if he's on the way down, we need to get out now, not next year, not the year after. So they're trying to anticipate these sort of, when is the guy not going to be worth what he's being paid right now? Is it now already? Do we get rid of them? So you look at the running backs, and Josh Jacobs is a fantastic running back. Alvin Kamara is still very good. Aaron Jones, as you mentioned, Joe Mixon, James Conner, DeAndre Swift, we talked about at the top, and then Tony Pollard. And then the last guy, Devin Singletary, is more of a backup, situational guy. He'd be the one obvious guy. But like all of the rest of them could or should still be starting for teams and doing well.
Other somewhat big names to mention here: Denzel Ward for the Browns, due $20 million of cash. He's not that high on the list, but just notable. Still a very good corner for the Browns. Rashawn Gary, I think you talked about him the other day. He's very low. He's right at the 50% mark, down with Jonathan Grenard, the lowest of anybody here. But Gary coming off a disappointing season, especially given when Micah Parsons was out there. Gary was the guy that was supposed to eat and didn't necessarily with the Micah Parsons addition.
Yeah, disappointing season for Rashawn Gary, absolutely. So that at least would make you question it for those reasons alone. The other guy I think that's pretty interesting is Tremaine Edmonds, who's still only 28 somehow.
Well, he was like
I know,
20
like
when he
8
came out,
into the
right?
league, right.
So, yeah.
But a guy who, big money signing for the Bears was supposed to be their kind of true difference maker at linebacker. I don't think has ever really lived up to the potential that he could offer. Is due a lot of money, and therefore is pretty high on this list of potential cap candidates. There was a report out there already that they were going to do it, but it was, I think, a debunked, fake account spreading misinformation.
Shocking. Don't fall for lack of not only misinformation stuff and fake accounts, but lack of context in the world here.
Or anybody that has like sunshine in their user handle.
I would just encourage, I would encourage everybody, when you want to make an argument against someone, argue against their best case instead of their worst case. Let their steel man instead of their straw man. Argue against the best case that the person you're arguing against can make, and your argument looks stronger.
Okay.
Don't argue against the straw man nonsense. That's what's happening. Social media, nonstop. All right, we'll put what other names do we have in here? Names that are not on the list, potential trades and players that we need to figure out what's going to happen here. We got Stephon Diggs. Did he plead not guilty in his whole deal?
Presumably.
So Diggs likely out in New England for all the rumors because I think he's a one-and-done guy. I don't know who. He's a very good player. Still a very good player. Seems to, his welcome is 1 year, and that's it.
Yeah.
365 days with Diggs, and then
yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of Diggs other than the fact that the man immediately wears out his welcome everywhere he goes, and obviously, perhaps a more important element is you've got this whole legal thing hanging over him, and who knows where that's going to go yet. So I think Diggs' fate is very much tied to that, and we don't know how that's going to work out.
We have Geno Smith, likely or potential cut with Fernando Mendoza coming in to the Raiders. Can you make the case? I mean, it certainly doesn't look good on paper that Geno Smith had a fringe playoff Seattle Seahawks team, leaves them, goes to the Raiders. Raiders get the number 1 overall pick.
Couldn't look worse.
Go and win the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold. It doesn't look good for Geno Smith.
Genuinely couldn't have worked out worse for Geno Smith. Like, other than suffering catastrophic career-ending injury, like literally could not have gone worse. The team you left won the Super Bowl, and the team you went to is the worst team in football.
The other piece, we give guys like Kyle Shanahan a lot of credit for their QB development and everything. I wonder, does John Schneider, was it Pete Carroll, does the entire environment in Seattle, even though it's not even an offensive, it hasn't even been a consistent offensive scheme or environment or anything like that, but you now have them maximizing Russell Wilson for a few years. He leaves.
But Pete Carroll
doesn't have success.
Like Pete Carroll went, he was part of the reason the Raiders.
No, I know, but I'm saying, was Seattle the thing, right? Or is John Schneider just really good at, getting out from players at the right time? And again, they wanted Geno Smith back, right? So he kind of like stumbled into this at the same time. But he also didn't want to. There was a tipping point here where John drew the line and said, "Okay, you're out because we're not going to pay you what you want, whatever it is." But in other words, they got rid of Russ at the right time. Apparently, got rid of Geno Smith at the right time. Was Seattle just an incredible environment to maximize Geno Smith? Because here's what I'm going to say: my fence sitting, Geno's not as bad as he looked last year.
No,
there was a lot of. He's not as good as there's for people who don't know the film versus analytics people. Supposedly.
It's also, it's not a static.
On X or battling. People love Geno Smith on film, but they hated his numbers and blah, blah, blah. And, the film people are down bad, as they say, after this year.
It's also, it's not a static thing. Like, he's been different versions of himself throughout his NFL career. Like, he's not always been X, always been Y. He's changes.
So just keep an eye on Geno. And, again, with so much uncertainty at the quarterback position and in the draft, some team might say Geno Smith is our starter for this year. I think a team could do it.
Maybe.
What do you bring him in as a backup?
Backup, yes. Starter, I can't really see. By the way, I just wanted to.
I mean, I don't want Geno Smith as my starter, but
I've been coming up with various comedy versions of this guy's name. I just wanted to actually write it out. The dude with the substation theory, right? His actual name.
Sunshine.
Yeah. So his you know, the way you get your handle and then the whatever you actually rewrite it to. So his handle, I'm just asking you the question, right? Would you immediately look at, let me tell, I found a theory on the internet, scientific theory indeed.
Who did it come from?
And it came from @living_energy, who apparently is Peter Cowan, straight line, whatever that's called, sunlight is life. Now, if I told you that sunlight is life,
vitamin D enthusiast.
Sunlight is life has a theory on the local electrical substation, would your immediate thought be, I'm going to trust that? I think he's on I'm going to take that lock, stock, and barrel and assume that answers the 49ers' injury questions.
Evaluate the source.
His pinned tweet is, media inquiries re the 49ers EMF injury story. DMs open. Email hello@sunlightislife. Look.
You haven't investigated sunlightislife.com.
I'm just saying.
Vitamin D enthusiast for your...
Correct.
How's that?
Before I even looked into it, I had some questions, is all I'm saying.
I'm glad you did that research.
By the way, also, location, Portland, Oregon. It's like, it's too much of a walking cliche at this point.
Ironically, they don't get much sunlight up there. Maybe that's why he's such an enthusiast. That was the best place to pitch in the PCL, by the way, Portland. Ball, no thin air, ball didn't fly. But yeah.
It's like finding out that, some guy having a theory that the local burger joint is responsible for all the injuries and the guy's handle is like vegan for life or whatever. It's like, come on. Can we look at where this is coming from before we take it and send it viral?
Pete is putting together the study.
Right.
Other names to just mention. We got to keep an eye on Brandon Ayuk. Went AWOL on the 49ers. I mean, dude.
I didn't bring him up as one of the stories of the offseason, but honestly, it kind of is. I mean, this guy is a top 10 caliber wide receiver if he's playing. And for some reason, he wasn't playing, and not because he was hurt, not because he was suspended, but because he just walked away from the team, having been 100%. Like, he got paid. He was healthy, and he just decided, you know what, no, I'm done with this. And his own team was like, I don't understand what's happening here. So, I mean, he can't possibly be still on the 49ers roster next year, which means he's probably going to be on somebody else's. And if that's the case, what is his trade value? Who wants to bring in that kind of crazy? Like, what are we doing here?
Why does Kyle Shanahan have all these quitters on his team? Devondre Campbell.
I bet Sunlight has life has some theories.
Oh, yeah. Well, we should get him investigating that.
EMF.
Get him and the Bugler working together, investigating why everybody quits on Kyle Shanahan.
Mm-hmm.
Quitters. For a long history of diva wide receivers, or however you want to describe them.
I mean, this is a real throwback to diva wide receivers. Like, this is going deep into the 90s.
But, like, a team, Stephon Diggs is going to be run off his third team here.
Yeah.
Fourth team.
I mean, he ran himself out of the first one, and then the other ones ran him out.
But, like, he's going to be done with his fourth team here. Diggs is going to be a tough one for teams. Ayuk is going to be even more difficult because he just signed a contract.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And then disappeared.
The only thing I can think of that even makes the slightest bit of sense to me is, because remember, one of the details that came out about his contract is that they were like ready to trade him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, the deal was almost done. And then Ayuk came in like last minute and said, okay, actually, I'll take the final deal that you put on the table, right? And Shanahan had to like send somebody running upstairs to be like, John, don't do it, quickly, get away from the phone. He signed, and basically prevent John Lynch from like pressing the button that traded Brandon Ayuk to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, did Brandon Ayuk just decide that the negotiations were so acrimonious and he felt so disrespected by the entire process that actually, having sat down and processed it a little bit, he's like, you know what, to hell with this, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm out. Right? That's the only thing I can even think of that remotely makes any sense. Otherwise, it's like straight up crazy.
All right, we got a lot more to get to here. Let's wrap this up. Taylor Decker, retirement watch. We'll keep an eye on it. That's it. Those are your cut candidates. Tomorrow, we'll break down the entire free agent class. So think about all these names we just discussed, potentially added to the already free agent names that we're going to mention tomorrow. There's a lot going on here over these next few weeks in the NFL. We got to do a little roadside assistance here, though. Quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage. But when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors. After a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. Get started today at Root.com. Today, we're providing roadside assistance for the Atlanta Falcons, Sam, who come in. We've got Ian Cunningham coming in as general manager, the number 2 man in the Falcons organization behind President Matt Ryan. We have Kevin Stefanski coming in as head coach. Raheem Morris is out. We have only 5 draft picks. You have Kirk Cousins, who's likely getting cut. You have Michael Penix coming off a knee injury. You have James Pierce doing whatever he's doing on the felony side.
Getting arrested.
1 year into his NFL career. How do we fix the Falcons?
Yeah, only 5 draft picks, the first of which is at pick 48.
Yeah.
Because you don't have your first-round draft pick. That's not great. Because usually in these situations where you only have, a handful of draft picks, you can try and trade back with your first pick, and you only move back a couple 10 spots. You can move into the second round. You immediately get a few more draft picks, and it's great. It's harder to do that when you start with 48 as your most valuable draft pick. You're just not getting as much when you trade back from
but
that
I'd
point of
still
view.
try. I mean,
You
I'd
can't
still
have to,
start
right?
working
Like
the board.
basically any offer that comes in the draft to move backwards, you should be taking.
Had Pierce not been arrested and charged with multiple felonies,
Yes.
you could still justify and say, look, if you're going to make the Pierce trade and you got 2 first-rounders, you got this year's first-rounder a year early, fine.
Yeah.
And you could make a case, hey, James Pierce, the player, versus, say, who would you pick at 13?
Right.
Jamad McCoy, the corner, his former teammate from Tennessee, whatever. You can make the case.
Or even just, you pick your favorite edge rusher at 13.
Pick your favorite edge rusher.
Right? Like
you got Pierce a year early, 10.5 sacks, what have you. Then you'd say, okay, fine. You still want to hedge that move by trading back and accumulating more picks. I think that would be part of the strategy no matter what. But now with the uncertainty around Pierce and his career, it just adds another hole to the defense. But the defense is returning a lot of talent. They did a great job getting after the quarterback last year. They did retain Jeff Ulbrich as defensive coordinator. I think that was a big part of –
best beard in the NFL.
That's right. A big part of what they wanted to do this offseason with Stefanski coming in, well-bearded coaching staff now over there. You could be their rugby expert. You could be their offload expert, I should say. Late game offload engineer.
Rugby consultation.
Late game offload engineer?
I think you don't need to – you're limiting it. I don't need a late game.
You just want to be a late game engineer?
No. Just offload.
Oh, just offload engineer. Oh, okay, yeah.
We don't need to limit this to late in the game.
We can offload in the first quarter.
That's what I'm saying.
We can do that. We could set that up. I believe complimentary receiver for Drake London has got to be key here. Darnell Mooney did a really nice job in 2024, a little bit less so, and banged up last year. So I think they need some receiving help. Kyle Pitts hits free agency now. I don't believe they'll retain him. So there's not a lot of starting roles necessarily available in Atlanta, which is good, but with few draft picks and a couple of spots to fill, they've, got to deploy resources properly here.
Yeah, so they're a perfect team, I think, where you don't have much flexibility in the draft because you only have those 5 draft picks, and the first of which is not particularly high. You don't have a ton of cap space, but that's fine because there's not a ton of high-end players to spend it on anyway. But there are quite a lot of these mid-level free agents that you could deploy your capital on, and you actually need quite a lot of that, right? So as you said,
all the cut candidates we talked about, the free agents, I think it is a good
and all these mid-level
fit.
free agents. Like there are number 2 wide receivers all over the place to be spending money on. Admittedly, number 2 wide receivers are getting quite a lot of cash these days. So, and you're going to need to replace Kyle Pitts if you're not going to bring him back for high-end money. Like this is a team I think that can be deploying smart money in free agency as opposed to just frivolously throwing money around.
I'm not saying they won't retain Kyle Pitts. I'm predicting that they won't. I'm not saying that they shouldn't.
Isn't that the same thing?
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm predicting that they won't, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm kind of torn on Pitts. Contract year, played his best. did look different this past year. But he could, and I think because of that, people love a little buy low on a former first-round tight end. There's a lot of data on the tight ends. Once they hit year 5, 6, 7, that's when they break out. So
I mean, if you were ever on the Kyle Pitts can be a superstar side of things, right? Last year gave you all the ammunition you would need to say it's still there, right? We can still do this. And he comes in a free agency, still only 25, still a giant freak show, able to run a 4.4 with crazy catch radius. I would assume he's going to get serious money in free agency. And again, so much cap space and only so many places to spend it on. Like, he's the perfect example of a guy that will get, quote unquote, overpaid, but, get a lot of money. He'll get the Milton Williams contract where it's like someone is willing to go to a place you're not willing to go financially, and you draw a line in the sand. My assumption is Atlanta has a number. Someone's going to go higher than that number, and he'll go somewhere else.
So to wrap up roadside assistance for the Falcons, we'll be doing a deep dive on every team coming out of the combine, how we're going to fix every team. But second-tier free agency could be a good fit for them, as well as turn that 5 draft picks into a lot more.
For both,
down.
wide receiver, tight end, and potentially edge rusher as well.
All right, it's Shouty Show time. Let's do it.
I've thought about it very deeply.
I liked how he started it with, I've thought about this long and hard.
I trust the backup quarterback more than I do Dak.
This is why Skip Bayless is the master of the Shouty Show segment.
I can't do it anymore. It is year 6.
It's just a never-ending arms race of idiocy between loud, obnoxious people. We are the antidote to that.
My volume's not great here.
No? What have we
still
done
good?
to it? Mine's fine. It hasn't changed. It's like perfect volume. This seems to happen to you repeatedly. Do you play with the volume control? Or?
So
I like
I'll do
the way
my best to hear.
I like the way you're cranking it ever and ever higher, though, meaning at some point you're going to get stop-skied and just blow out an
I
eardrum.
don't want that. I don't need that. All right, let's start with, oh my gosh, our boss, Mike T. Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's Kirk Cousins. I think he's somebody that, even at 38 years old, another year off of an Achilles injury, and believe it or not, a place where I think it makes a lot of sense is the New York Jets. And let me tell you why. If I'm a quarterback, and first thing I think about is, can I be protected? Stephen A., make sure you're taking copious notes here. Okay, Olu Fashanu on one side, okay? Armand Membu on the other, Joe Tipman at center. I know I have good protection. Then I keep Breece Hall. I either sign him or I tag him with Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor. That's a really solid group of young skill players. So I know I'm protected. I have a veteran play caller in Frank Reich. And again, I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins, but what I am saying, I think Kirk Cousins could resurrect his career and be productive for the Jets, given the fact that they have a really good offensive line and young skill players.
I actually don't hate this take. I kind of agree
right.
with this.
All right.
SA
Stephen A's gonna
hates it,
yell
though,
at
I can
him,
tell.
apparently.
Go ahead, Stephen A.
Kirk Cousins on that turf in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Have you lost your mind? Have you lost your mind? Absolutely not. Kirk Cousins in New York, in that market, are you insane? You know what, Mike T? I mean, you're something special, man. You're something special because, no matter what he says, Dan, I can't get over it. It's impossible not to love this man. It's just impossible, man. You know what I'm saying? No matter what craziness comes out of his mouth, you just find yourself saying, damn,
See,
I love that Mike T. I really, really do. He's crazy.
Remember we talked about the dynamic that Stephen A. sets up? Kellerman outlined it. Like, this is a perfect example of that, right? You wait for somebody else to say the thing that you deem is crazy, and then you just react the way the man
Have
at
you
the
lost
bar-
your mind?
Right. You just react the way the man at the bar reacts, and you can do that forever. You don't have to be Skip Bayless and transforming yourself into an ever more cartoonish version of yourself with takes. You can just be the everyman and let somebody else make the take.
Stephen A., the everyman.
This is why it works.
The slight difference between me and Stephen A., there are some minor differences.
The one minor difference.
Between him and I. My initial reaction, my disagreement with Mike T., had I been invited to Shouty Show land to respond, I would have said...
What a day that would be.
Right? I would have said, my disagreement starts with playing outdoors. In the Meadowlands, with the wind, with Kirk Cousins' squirt gun. I think that's going to be difficult just chucking the ball around. Kirk Cousins was a meticulous... He was meticulous in all of his free agent dealings. It was like every place that he went was like, where's my passer rating going to benefit? I need a dome. I need Justin Jefferson. I need to be in And so he goes to Minnesota with receivers. He goes to Atlanta with receivers. He's indoors. Like, he knows.
Yeah.
He knows what he's working with. As far as so, I would be worried about throwing outdoors in New York. That would be my first response. Where Stephen A. says, "You can't handle me. You can't handle the media. You can't handle the pressure. It's the pressure cooker." So that'd be the difference. I'm going like on field. I don't think it's a good fit because I don't want him playing outdoors like that. I don't want him going to Pittsburgh or Cleveland or New York. And Stephen A is like, "Nah, you can't handle the media."
It's always like the kernel of truth versus the sort of how far you can take the take. Like, I think the kernel of truth is that Kirk Cousins might be able to work reasonably well for some team as a starter this year.
Yeah.
Based off, needs and another year removed
I
from
agree with
Achilles.
Mike on that, yeah.
Potentially, if you give him a good offensive line, he can still function. Beginning it with a Darnold-like impact, I don't know that he's capable of that. Like, Darnold played...
That's the producer's fault. That's not
whatever
Mike's fault.
football.
That's the producer's fault.
Didn't he say? Wasn't Darnold like one of the words out of his mouth early?
But that was the segment. The producer's like, "Hey guys, here's what we're gonna do. Darnold just won the Super Bowl. We're gonna predict who's gonna have a Darnold-like impact." That's the producer's fault.
Right.
That's the segment.
But the point is, I don't know how high the ceiling is for that Kirk Cousins-led team next year. I would imagine not particularly high. You could argue even at his peak, he didn't have the Darnold-like impact for anybody. The Minnesota always hoped that he would have the Darnold-like impact, and they got close to that, but never quite all the way there. So, again, the kernel of truth is, I think Kirk Cousins could probably start for somebody next year. The problem with it is, I think you take it too far, and I don't think that's a particularly good thing for that team.
That's the segment. That's the producer's fault. That's like, who's going to be the next Brock Purdy in the draft? I don't know. Who's going to be the next Mr. Irrelevant to become the most efficient quarterback in his first 4 years? No one. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Who's going to have the next Darnold-like impact? I don't know. You got to make someone up. So, I know. I agree with the premise that the boss Mike T brings to the table there.
Oh, do you?
But maybe not the Jets.
Kiss ass.
What?
Nothing.
I'm going to see Mike next week. I've already trashed him enough, through the years. Give him some credit. All right, we got a friend of the show, Pony, with a hot take here.
Ooh.
Let's face it, Danny, and I know you have a problem telling the truth when it comes to your team sometimes. They were the biggest fluke in NFL history last year.
Oh!
All right, they had 6. They were.
Wow.
It's true. They had 6 wins when trailing in the final 2 minutes of games. That had never happened in NFL history. They were more like a 500 team than a team that went to the divisional round. Their stats were not good defensively. They were 23rd points allowed, and I think 25th total defense. So they were bad, okay? This team is not as close as their finish suggests. They were competitive against the Rams. Congratulations on all your success, but to me, there needs to be a roster upgrade, especially on defense. And if you're telling me right now that you can get, I would say conservatively, one of the 10 best defensive players in the NFL, who Chicago would love, by the way, just his personality and attitude, and all you're giving up is your 3rd best receiver, because Burden has come on, and Odunze is going to be the guy there, plus you've got Komet and Loveland, and a first-round pick that's late in the first round, that would be an all-time heist for the Bears, and yes, you could actually feel like they're a playoff team for next year, because without...
So Pony's going all in on Max Crosby.
Getting elevated to the big time. Pony on first things first. Stepping up from the Pittsburgh.
It's not just a local Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah. I wonder if they asked him about the nipples.
I'm sure Danny and Nick dove in.
The biggest fluke in NFL history is pretty strong. And by pretty strong,
yeah, that's how you get the invite.
Crazy.
That's how you get the invite.
Right. But it's you've taken it too far. You've taken it to a silly place.
You layer some solid Bears analysis with some extremes.
Like, that's the thing. The analysis of they won a lot of close games late in the game, and that's probably not sustainable long term. That's fine. That's what people were saying about Kansas City, and if you want to rerun history, that looks pretty good about now. Taking it to this is the biggest fluke in NFL history is probably fairly over the top. But that's how you get invited on the first things first.
Kids are getting restless over here. We're running low on time. So we've got...
Neither one of us has ever been invited on first things first, No,
I know. It's like you have to sandwich your good analysis by a couple extremes, right?
And that's despite me being friends with Nick Wright for 16 years, whatever it is, you know?
You would think you would have you'd
Now,
be
maybe
on
us-
there explaining the Herbert take.
Maybe us trashing the Shouty Shows on a weekly basis is part of that. But I'm just saying.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
That's how you get invited on, you know? You break the hot take out. The Bears are the biggest fluke in NFL history. You don't get on there by doing what we do.
Our fate's sealed. We're not getting invited. We're bringing down the entire genre every single week here.
But again,
it apart.
I would like to stress that I think that Nick Wright belongs in a slightly separate category from all the other Shouty Show hot take artists.
Who's the kiss ass now? All right.
I'm not saying it's, look, the man has some hot takes, but I think there's a difference between him and, again, one difference between him and Stephen A., just like you and your one difference.
Panic mode over here is the TV has disconnected from the internet.
I can't reach the internet right now. Check. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
it's
not good.
It's been an issue here.
Yeah.
I fired the iPads at them.
The good news is they still haven't located the baseball bat in here. Which
don't get them looking. He's swinging like some wrapping paper or something instead. Yeah. But if he finds the bat,
then we're in trouble.
A lot of trouble. Like one of these cameras is going down. Mm-hmm. Benny's got a good swing too. Dude could drop some bombs. All right, we got a parenting analogy here coming up from Colin Cowherd.
Oh, I think I've heard this.
Fernando Mendoza, I worry about the Raiders as his parent in this league. Bad O-line. Even if Clint Kubiak's a good coach, he'll be probably the fourth best coach in his division. Ownership is impulsive and ridiculously impatient. I don't have a Mendoza issue. I have a Mendoza to the Raiders issue. And you just have to remember how this works. Joe Burrow's unbelievable. He may be the best third and fourth down quarterback we've had in a decade. He can't make the playoffs because of the parent. The kid is limited. You've all seen this before when you were a kid growing up and you had a buddy and you just knew his parents were a mess. The kid ends up being a mess. No matter how hopeful and optimistic you are about a kid, the parents control a lot, 0 to 21. Bad habits are formed from parents. Kids watch. So as good as the quarterback is, Trevor Lawrence, until he gets Liam Cohen. You're like, yeah, I was a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. I don't like him anymore. Then he gets Liam Cohen. I'm like, I love this guy.
How could Trevor succeed when his dad's in the club in Cincinnati, not flying home with the team?
Red flag. It's a red flag.
This is incredible. That was well done by Colin.
Yeah, I mean,
prodigy kid with the bad parents.
You said before, generally, I think owners are wildly overvalued. But the one area where that's not true is that if they're bad, it's a problem. Like, it's very difficult to overcome a bad owner.
Let's workshop this thing. Owners are special teams.
Yes.
They're special teams.
Correct.
Don't lose the game.
Good take. It only matters if your special teams are so bad that it's the reason you're losing games. Yeah. Ownership only matters if your owners are so bad that they are the reason you stink. And that's the case for the owners that say get an F on the NFLPA report card. And then their reaction to getting said F is to have the NFL report card deemed illegal by the CBA. Not to actually fix anything that got you an F, but to say, you know what, I'm upset that I got an F. I'm going to make sure that never happens again. Like you came to...
No, the report cards still exist. They just won't become public.
It's like you came to the right... You were led to the right fix, right? I need to ensure that I don't get an F in future, but your methodology was wrong. It's like the way to solve that is to be not an F caliber owner, not to ensure that the F never becomes public.
That's good. It's not really shouty. It's not a shouty show, so to speak, but it's like Colin's got that Mike Greenberg. Like this is going to be a special segment. This is going to be
sitting
a
on
special
that for a while.
Take.
That's a metaphor he's had kicking around.
Oh, for sure.
Kicking around for a bit.
That
makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's some logic there, right? And this is part of why people latch on to the Tom Brady minor owner thing and make it such a big deal is because it's seen as Brady could curb the bad in Mark Davis.
Yeah.
Brady could turn ownership in Las Vegas into a positive as opposed to a negative. And even if he doesn't, or at least just a neutral, right? Just make it not the reason you're losing games anymore.
I kind of wish we covered Al Davis a little bit more throughout his career because he was this cross between football genius but also had these tendencies in the draft and everything that may have, certainly hurt the franchise. Always looking for speed receivers and the whole deal.
He feels like a classic example of a guy who at one point was absolutely a pioneering genius and did all sorts of great things, and then maybe the game passed him by the end. And it's like now he's just a crotchety old man drafting guys that run 4.2. It's like, is that, You know, like, and these things can
that
be
would definitely be me.
But like these things can be true at the same time. Like
Yeah.
you can't, you don't just be like, oh, Al Davis is one of the worst owners ever because right now he's doing some crazy things. It's like you can accept what he used to be and also acknowledge what is now happening. Like I think by the end he was not a good owner, but at one point he really was.
So there we go. Shouty Shows for today. We got the boss. We got Pony. Is that Pony's first Shouty show?
Fair play to
Debut?
Pony. Yeah, I believe so.
Good for him on
I
first.
think
So
we
was
win.
he co-hosting that show?
I don't know.
Or it wasn't just like a phone-in? I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, co-hosting for the day or whatever, like
Yeah.
a guest appear. I don't know. Anyway, either way, it's a jump into the big leagues for him.
It was. Kids are getting restless over here. They're swinging. They haven't found the bat yet, which is good.
It's good. Yeah. Nothing smashed yet. That's always positive.
All right, we're running around near
Dancing through the
cameras.
cables is potentially
Probably shouldn't do
hazardous.
that. You want to come say hi again? Okay. Do you have any
It's only
opinions? Careful. Watch out for the plugs. Do you have any opinions on the Bengals
Generally.
or the Reds? I'm losing my IFB.
Well, we don't need it anymore.
You guys having a good time with Daddy this week? Yeah.
It's a good question. What does Coward think of parents leaving their kids to podcast?
Oh, this is bad parenting.
To
No,
be fair,
I got a lot of positive feedback.
You've done the exact opposite. You've brought your kids to the podcast rather than abandoning them to podcasts.
I am Kirk Herbstreeting the kids here.
Yes.
I am, and there's enough parents who are like, "Oh, that's cool." Like I'm a parent, I can relate. Just like dog owners relate to Kirk.
I forgot to send this to you. I didn't see this live during Radio Row, but did you see he had one of the dogs in like a motorized cart thing that he was wheeling around Radio Row. Did you see that? You must have been livid at that.
Oh yeah, I don't bring my kids to Radio Row. I mean, maybe
Not just that, but in like a remote controlled, motorized thing to wheel him around in. It's like
Kirk has reshaped his image by
Unbelievable.
dragging the multiple dogs around.
But he's really pushing the limits of like.
I'm going to win
people's-
Father of the Year by kid. We just
Yeah.
interact.
He's
hang out with
really pushing the limits of people's tolerance for that bit. I think.
I know he is, and some people don't like kids either. So they're just
True.
like, "What's Steve doing?
Yeah.
What's going on here?" But I got positive YouTube feedback, so I figured we'll
That's
go
all
back.
that matters. Plus, you don't have another option. So
No, I have no other
Yeah.
options. You kids are one more day stuck with me during the shows. Any good opinions or hot takes, guys? Sam's annoyed. It's like, what's going on? Ruining my show. Is that a creamsicle shirt?
No.
Would you call that creamsicle colored?
What color is this?
Toby, what color is that? Don't look to Benny. You can.
Come on. Both said, hey, yellow is the right answer.
We might all be colorblind, but it's possible. The whole family. All right, that's it for us today. We got tomorrow, 9 a.m. We're going to go full free agency breakdown. A lot of names to break down tomorrow. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow. More. Check the mic. Say bye, Tobes.